Takeshi cannot believe that he has finally managed to kill someone. He remembers the painful memories when he was brutally bullied. Takeshi realizes that he might have come to this world to grind his classmates' bones to dust. Takeshi raises Matsugana's head towards the blood-red moonlight and declares their revenge has finally begun. In one troubling event, an unfortunate boy is being bullied by his classmates. It is being cruelly called a pig. He is held on the ground and kicked and hit many times. Soon, a bucket of cold water is poured on him to surprise him. Not only that, but his desk in the classroom is also covered with mean words. This happens to him only because he is not very good looking. He is in 3rd year class B. His name? Hirota Keiichi. Every day his sad life is full of mistreatment and humiliation, and things get worse day by day. One day, someone throws rotten fruit from the trash onto the ground, and Takeshi is forced to eat every small piece of it. So when poor Takeshi hesitates and is about to cry, he is hit hard by one of his classmates, named Matsugana, who forces him to eat since he is a pig. Other classmates, Nabuo and Yori, laugh at him, joining in on the cruelty. Not only them, but Makio Tsurama, Natsuki, Kamura, and Shinjiri Sato are among the bullies harassing Takeshi. Takeshi is beaten and forced to eat the rotten food. As he cries while eating, the bullies shout at him and make fun of him. To make it worse, one of them takes a picture. Soon, his head is roughly pulled up by his hair, creating a terrible memory. One of the bullies suggests that the picture should be in the graduation yearbook, titled The Pig and the Owner. For the unlucky Takeshi, life is terrible, and he has finally reached his breaking point. To his surprise, he's transported to another world. There, he's happily fishing by a river. As he finishes, he lies down in the open to relax and enjoy the nice weather. Suddenly, he's approached by 2 ugly and large orcs. However, Takeshi smiles at them, as if he had known them for some long time. He wonders if it's already dinner time, and tells them he is coming with them. Soon, he carries his bag of fish and walks with the orcs. After being surrounded by the light of the train, he found himself in a strange place surrounded by fierce orcs. At that time, Takeshi was ready to die. But surprisingly, those orcs treated him better than his mean classmates. He had bonded with the orcs in 6 months, mostly because he looked like them. It seems that the orcs think of him as their own. When he reaches the village, he is warmly welcomed by a little orc girl named Ogugu, who hugs him tightly. She then gives him a small sculpture that looks like him. To his surprise, Ogugu had made this tiny sculpture all by herself, especially for him. Next, they all have a great meal together, and after that, they sing and dance together. Even though they are not rich, everyone is smiling and happy. Takeshi is fully enjoying his new life. One day, a beautiful elf girl named Carellia visits him. Takeshi's face lights up when he sees her, as he has fallen in love for the first time. They both enjoy a quiet meal together, happy in each other's company. Takeshi finds Carellia very similar to his sister, Fumina. Suddenly, a terrible memory comes back where Takeshi is standing helplessly in front of a house that is on fire. He frantically tries to get inside, calling for Fumina, who is trapped inside the house. He sees a very weak Fumina calling out to him. He tearfully tells her to hold on, as he is here to rescue her. But a large piece of burning wood falls on poor Fumina, and the dear girl dies. In the present, Takeshi doesn't realize that a tear is falling from his eye to his cheek. He quickly wipes it away and apologizes to Carellia. Suddenly, he remembers that he had brought a beautiful necklace for her, which he gives to her. Carellia is overjoyed and she hugs Takeshi tightly. As the sky gets darker, Carellia decides to leave. They say goodbye, and she disappears into the forest. Elves usually dislike humans, but this time, Takeshi's unusual face has become a blessing because maybe Carellia doesn't see him as a human. Soon he returns to the orc village, where he is, as usual, warmly welcomed. Takeshi thinks that it is easier to live like a human when you don't actually live with actual humans. That night, Takeshi is happy to learn that they are having stewed chicken for dinner. Little does he know that their peaceful days are numbered. One day, he is shocked when he finds 2 orcs brutally murdered. One of them is horribly beheaded. As he moves forward, he is devastated to find many dead orcs lying in a pool of blood. It turns out that the orcs were killed by 3 of Takeshi's cruel classmates. One of them is Matsugana. the one who made him eat the rotten food and insulted him. The three classmates immediately recognize Takeshi, but Takeshi is more shocked to see those bullies in his world. However, Matsugana doesn't know what's going on, but tells him that the bad news that all 34 of their horrible classmates have been transported to this world. Another classmate, Yugo Oniri, while roughly holding a blood-dripping orc's head, sneers and wonders if Takeshi has been living with the pigs all this time. Anger appears in Takeshi's eyes, when suddenly two angry orcs come charging towards them. But Matsugana smirks and swings his sword around, chanting a magic spell. In no time, the heads of those orcs are cut off to Takeshi's shock. Soon, both giants are knocked out, lying in a pool of their own blood. On top of that, Nabua and Yuguro make sarcastic comments about orcs and how easily they can be hunted because they are so stupid. Matsugana is eager to check out Takeshi's abilities, while Yuguro comments that his looks are still bad. To the trio's amusement, he is still at the starting level with 0 skills. They start to mock him, asking what he can do with hidden skills. However, Takeshi is still confused about levels and skills because he doesn't know what they're talking about. Matsugana tells him that when he came to this world, someone who looked like a goddess explained it to him. Then, he shows a jewel embedded on the back of his hand, stating that these jewels can be used to show the skills. He wonders that since he saw everyone from the class at that time, Takeshi somehow got ignored. Maybe because even the goddess thought he was too ugly. Takeshi is too stunned to care about their mean remarks. Suddenly, he sees the same necklace on Matsugana's neck that he had given to Carellia a few days back. He angrily asks Matsugana where he got that necklace. Matsugana says they were hunting elves that day. Takeshi still looked puzzled. Yuguro explained that they were hunting elf women. Matsugana rudely says that the woman with the necklace had a great body. To Takeshi's horror, they tell him how they forced themselves onto her until the end. However, when they tried to take the necklace from her, she fought back. This made Matsugana angry, and he killed Carellia. Takeshi's world is shattered so ruthlessly. He drops down, shoulders slumped and eyes full of tears. The cruel trio starts to mock him for loving an elf despite being a pig. Takeshi, in a fit of rage, charges wildly at them, but Yuguro uses a magic spell called Magic Walk and quickly knocks him down, calling him as low as ever. He scolds Takeshi for trying to fight them. For punishment, the trio grabs Takeshi to a steep cliff and yells at him to jump. Yuguro wishes he had a phone to record the fall. The deeply hurt Takeshi cannot understand why they are so eager to hurt and to kill. Then, Matsugana puts his foot on Takeshi's shoulder and told them that they are special, unlike him. And according to him, if there were a fly or a cockroach in front of them, it must be killed instantly. There is no police. They enjoy the freedom to do whatever they want. They laugh as they wait to see a flying pig. An agonized Takeshi furiously vows that he will never forgive those bullies. But Yuguro gives him a sharp kick as he falls down from a great height. The bullies are still disappointed, as they can't see Takeshi fall through the forest. To them, Takeshi has always been boring until the end. However, fate has other plans for Takeshi, as he's miraculously cushioned by some tree branches in a swamp. But the damage is done. Indeed, depressed Takeshi decides to head back. He's feeling quite low as he cannot save the orcs. The village shows an even more terrible scene, where many orcs have been mercilessly killed. Takeshi screams in distress and agony and wonders if only the dead bodies are left. He cries in misery, as everything around him had been completely destroyed. Another terrible surprise is waiting for him, as he sees an innocent little Ogugu lying lifelessly on the ground. A new wave of sadness hits Takeshi as he remembers the happy times he had spent with the orcs, how Ogugu used to welcome him whenever he returned home. And then, Carellia's sweet face. Takeshi lets out a chilling scream that shakes the surroundings. He cries and apologizes to every orc he couldn't protect. He tearfully complains about why he wasn't given any powers. Those deceitful ones were all given the skills. Why not him? He bangs his fists on the ground while he lays down and demands that he wants strength to avenge his friends. How he wished he had power, because then he could have saved Carellia as well. He didn't realize that he is surrounded by orcs who share the same grief and pain with him. They bang their heads on the rocks out of sorrow. One of them holds the tiny body of Ogugu and lets out a sorrowful, deafening wail. Takeshi looks at the grieving orcs and fully understands how miserable they must feel. He gathers all the sorrowful orcs and turns their sadness into rage. With the help of a wooden stick, he draws a fierce face in the dirt and encourages them to take revenge against their tormentors. Meanwhile, the villain Matsugana is forcing himself on a helpless human girl that he kidnapped from a village and has made her a slave. The girl cries in pain when he smiles in satisfaction. The unfortunate girl is then thrown where other slave girls are huddled together. As another bully, Nabara watches Matsugana having fun. He suddenly wants to go again. However, Matsugana warns him not to be too rough on the girls because they need to be sold to other buyers. They don't know that they are secretly being watched by Takeshi and his group of orcs. Takeshi notices so far that everyone except Yuguro had taken off their jewels. So when Nabara is about to choose a girl, Takeshi signals the orcs that it's time to attack. Soon, the orcs throw oil balls at Nabara, Yuguro, and Matsugana. The oil hits the bonfire, and soon there is a huge explosion. The trio screams in fear as fire spreads all around. Next, rocks begin to fall, and a big one hits the back of a confused Yuguro. Soon, each of them is hit with huge rocks, and they are literally thrown off balance. Takeshi laughs and mocks them for rolling away so shamefully. Nabara immediately recognizes the voice, while Yuguro angrily wonders how he survived. But they are not given any time to think as more rocks are thrown at them. Matsugana dodges and tries to reach his glove with a powerful jewel. But before he can grab it, he is hit on the shoulder by a giant rock. He trips and falls to the ground. He falls flat on his stomach, unable to resist the countless pieces of gravel thrown at him. Nabua comments helplessly that they are surrounded. Yuguro angrily challenges Takeshi to come out and stop being a coward. However, Takeshi starts to run in a certain direction, making it look like he's trying to escape. Yuguro sees him running away and begins chasing after him frantically. Soon, he activates his skill, the Magic Walk, which is activated by the jewel embedded in his pants at his kneecap. In no time, he manages to catch up to Takeshi and blocks his path triumphantly. Although, he doesn't know that the group of orcs is ready to stab him with their spears while hiding deep in a hole behind him. Takeshi announces that it is Yuguro's time to fall. Soon, the orcs carry Yuguro with their spears deep in his body. They throw him to a spot and quickly tear him to pieces. Next, Takeshi reaches Nabura, who doubts that Takeshi actually killed Yuguro. However, Takeshi reminds him that once he tried to kill him and the orcs too. Nabua calls him a pig with disdain, while Takeshi stops him and tells him to look behind. Before Nabua can turn around, his head is grabbed by two strong hands of the orcs, who instantly squeeze and crush it. Now only Matsugana is lying flat on the ground, already too injured to get back onto his feet. He scolds Takeshi for making a surprise attack with the orcs, and wonders if he is even human. Takeshi steps on his head and reminds Matsugana that he never treated him like a human. With that, he angrily kicks his face. Takeshi yells at him and reminds him that all his classmates kicked him, hit him, and stepped on him. Takeshi angrily crushes his face and reminds him of the crimes he has committed. A tearful Takeshi is certain of those deceitful classmates who have committed those crimes. Matsugana gives up and begs him to spare his life. Takeshi reminds him of the time when he was begging for mercy from them. But did they listen to him back then? Suddenly, Matsugana blurts out when the people in the class plan to set his house on fire, he tried to stop them. An astonished Takeshi moves his foot away from his face. An excited Matsugana sits up and eagerly tells him that he only made jokes. A painful memory floods Takeshi's mind when he remembers the terrible scene with flames and a weak voice calling out to him. Brother. In a fit of rage, he yells at Matsugana for lying to him and his family is dead. However, Matsugana insists that it wasn't him. Matsugana reveals that other than him, the whole class was involved. He adds that although he couldn't stop them from setting the fire, he was the one who called the fire department urgently because arson is always extreme. Takeshi is shocked by such a terrible revelation. The fire that destroyed his whole life was arson. He was stunned to learn that the whole class was involved in such a horrible act. He knew that those guys had always been bullies. But how could all of them commit such an unforgivable crime? A sly Matsugana, seeing Takeshi stunned, tries to sneak in his jeweled glove, when an orc nearby sees his intentions and stabs his hand with his spear. Matsugana screams in great pain, and Takeshi immediately regains his focus. He realizes that Matsugana had been lying all this time. Since when did he go against the whole class? After all, he was the one who so easily pushed him off the cliff. Matsugana begins to beg like a dog, asking to spare his life as he would do anything for it. He's even ready to become Takeshi's dog for the rest of his life and to lick his shoes. Matsugana falls so low that he even tries to lick the ground, waiting for Takeshi to give him a command. Takeshi happily commands him to die, just like Nabua and Yuguro. For the elves and orcs he mercilessly killed, and for his own sister. Takeshi seriously reminds Matsugana of his own words that if one sees a roach or a fly, one should kill it instantly. With that, Takeshi raises his spear and stabs Matsugana's head with all his might, crushing his skull. One of the orcs tears Matsugana's head from his body and raises it with his might as a sign of victory. Takeshi cannot believe that he has finally managed to kill someone. He remembers the painful memories when he was brutally bullied and then photographed. Takeshi remembers those annoying words repeatedly mentioned on TV and manga saying that revenge doesn't solve anything. Takeshi believes all those words are all lies. If they didn't take revenge, then those bullies would have continued doing these horrible things. If they weren't punished, then what would happen to the victims? His mind is filled again with all those painful past memories, especially of the cold-blooded murder of his little sister Fumina. He expresses his gratitude to all of his teammates, the orcs, for helping him out. Takeshi realizes that he might have come to this world to grind his classmates' bones to dust. His eyes flash with anger when he firmly grits his teeth. Takeshi raises Matsugana's head towards the blood-red moonlight and declares their revenge has finally begun. He makes a promise to himself to get rid of all of the remaining 31 classmates out of the original 34. In the middle of a big, busy city, a man is tied to a tall post, and a large group of people gathers around to see what will happen to him. People are scared and trembling as they watch the horrible scene. Takeshi is hiding under a hooded cloak, peeking out carefully from behind a wall. He sees his two cruel classmates hurting and torturing people in this strange new world, right in front of his eyes. One of the classmates uses magic to set the tied-up man on fire. The poor man cries out in pain and begs them to stop, but the two mean classmates just smile wickedly. The burning man's terrified wife and young daughter scream for help and plead for mercy. One of the classmates, named Natsuki Iwamoto, warns the scared crowd that this will happen to anyone who tries to go against them. Takeshi found these two classmates by using a map he got from the previous bullies. By following that map, he arrived in this town, determined to find them. Takeshi knows his classmates are really bad people, but with their new magical powers, they get to do whatever they want. The second classmate is Tsubasa Kamura, a creepy guy who wears glasses and always has his tongue hanging out of his mouth. He tells the crowd that if they don't want to end up like the Burning Man, they must promise to obey the 34 so-called heroes. Takeshi watches them closely, knowing that one day they suddenly gained incredible powers. Then, they quickly defeated the demon lord of this world and were praised as heroes. But soon, they started using their powers for selfish reasons and began to scare and hurt people. 3 of Takeshi's female students, Mayuka Sudama, Keiko Furui, and Yumiko Haramatsu, are cruelly making 4 unlucky people pull their carriage like animals. To Takeshi, his classmates are just heartless bullies who enjoy causing pain and suffering to others. Back in the center of town, the mother and daughter continue to beg for mercy from the Iwato and Kamura. The 2 evil classmates stare at the young girl's body and lick their lips, thinking rancid thoughts. They start to harass the scared girl, telling her now that her father is dead, they will be taking care of her. The mother grabs Kamura's leg and warns her daughter to run away, but the girl is too scared to move. Kamura kicks the mother in the face for getting in his way. The jewel in Kamura's earring lights up, and a magic spell called Tameru activates. From his mouth, a slippery tongue comes out like a snake and wraps around the girl's body. The tongue squeezes her so tightly, she can't move at all. Iwamoto says that he likes the girl's short hair because she looks like an idol he admires. Kamura tastes the girl's skin with his tongue and agrees with Iwamoto. The mother holds onto Iwamoto's leg, crying and begging to leave her daughter alone. Iwamoto looks at her with disgust and uses his magic to make flame appear, threatening to burn the woman like the man on the post. The poor man tied to the post turns to ash from the intense fire. Kamada reminds Iwamoto that burning the man reminds him of when Takeshi's sister was burned alive. Both cruel men start to sing an annoying song, not knowing that Takeshi, full of anger, is listening to their conversation. He remembers the time when Kamada and Iwamoto cruelly congratulated him on his sister's death. A grieving Takeshi was too numb with pain to respond because his whole house had recently burnt down with his little sister inside. They kept heartlessly talking about how cute his sister was with her short haircut. Iwamoto goes on about how much he likes girls with short hair. They kept bullying Takeshi, forcing him to laugh at their cruel jokes. When Takeshi didn't respond, Iwamoto started slapping him for their amusement. In the present, Takeshi trembles with rage, realizing he missed such an important clue at that time. He was too shocked to notice how those heartless classmates were laughing about his sister's death. Now, Takeshi asks the spirits for their power and signals the orcs to attack. As night falls on the grand mansion where evil lives, a young, innocent girl becomes a victim of Kamada's evil desires, trapped by his writhing tongue. Amused, Iwamoto urges Kamada to hurry up because he wants his turn. Suddenly, the main door opens and a foul smell enters the room. Iwamoto covers his nose and mouth. Foul-odored slimes slide through the open door, and a loud voice announces that they are the smelliest slimes in the forest, perfect for their filthy mansion. Kamada is shocked to see Takeshi standing on top of the stairs, looking serious. They can't believe Takeshi also came to this world with them. They keep throwing insults at him, but Takeshi's mind is focused on one important question. Did they set his house on fire that night? This sudden attack catches Kamada and Iwamoto off guard. Takeshi reminds Kamada that he mentioned his sister's short hair earlier. Takeshi's sister was sick and rarely went out. So how did these two know about her haircut? Kamada insists that he might have seen her randomly, but Takeshi angrily yells that his family was poor and his sister had been growing her hair for a long time. One day, she suddenly asked to cut her hair short for the summer. Takeshi didn't want to cut it because she had worked hard to grow it. He wonders if she wanted to go to a hairstylist, and even if they could afford it. Fumina innocently asked her brother to cut her hair. The incident happened on the day the fire started. Takeshi remembers cutting her hair short. He insists that Kamada and Iwamoto could have been the only ones to see Fumina's short hair from inside his house just before the fire started. Takeshi accuses Kamada and Iwamoto of starting the fire in his house. For a moment, both Kamada and Iwamoto are shocked, not expecting such an attack from the usually naive Takeshi. They then burst into laughter. They think that since they are in another world, nothing worse could happen to them. Kamada mocks Takeshi, saying his sister is already dead, so what can he do about it? Takeshi coldly asks if they want to admit to the murder. Seeing them confused makes Takeshi smile darkly, knowing these guys have always been trash. Now with their confession, it will be much easier to kill them. Kamada calls Takeshi scum and tells him to act humanely once in a while. Iwamoto wonders if Takeshi even has any skills. When they learn that he has an unknown skill, they laugh at him, saying he can't do anything right, not even in this world. They call him a pig and say he's still at the bottom. Iwamoto orders Kumura to throw Takeshi out of the mansion where he'll turn him into grilled pork. Kamada unwinds his tongue and releases the girl, warning her not to run or he'll burn her and her mother to ashes. Kamada sends his slippery tongue towards Takeshi, and Takeshi yells at the orcs to act. The top connection of the chandelier is cut, and it seems Takeshi and his team had set a trap earlier. As the chandeliers lower, the ropes connected to the carpet are pulled. The carpet is abruptly swiped from under the villains' feet, catching them off guard and throwing them into the stinky sea of slimes. They begin to gag and puke from the foul smell. Takeshi realizes that the even so-called heroes can't stand these slimes. Kamada and Iwamoto struggle to escape the stinky slimes but are stuck. They spot a water fountain and force themselves out of the slimes. As they dive into the small pool of water to wash off the stink, Takeshi watches calmly. Iwamoto asks Kamada to use his skill, but panics when Kamada doesn't respond. Kamada is in a strange state with his eyes rolled up, his tongue out, and his skin pale. Takeshi reveals he added a lot of she-bear Fisali's juice to the water. Iwamoto watches in horror as Kamada is completely paralyzed. Next, Iwamoto feels dizzy and his head spins. Still arrogant, Iwamoto claims this wouldn't work on heroes like himself. Takeshi points out someone behind him, a giant orc with a club, appears behind Iwamoto and hits him hard. Takeshi questions them further about his sister's death and vows to make them suffer even more than she did before allowing them to die. As Kamada wakes up, he realizes that he's all tied up with ropes. He looks around and is very surprised that he can't move. Kamada looks across the table and sees Iwamoto also tied up on the other side of the table. Both of them are in the same situation, stuck and unable to move. They are facing each other, both looking scared and confused. Kamada tries to move and wiggle in his chair, but it's no use. Kamada gets angry and tries to use his magic power called Tamaru. He tries to stick out his tongue, hoping to use his magic to free himself. But nothing happens. His magic doesn't work, and he feels even more frustrated. He starts to panic because he realizes he can't use his powers to escape. When Takeshi comes into the room, he holds the special jewels that belong to Kamada and Iwamoto. These jewels are the source of their magic powers. Takeshi expects them to be very scared now, especially since they don't have their powers. Iwamoto is very worried and wonders what Takeshi is going to do to them. He looks at Takeshi with fear in his eyes. Takeshi tells them that they are going to play a game. It's a dictation game, where they have to write down things. Takeshi explains that when he first started in high school, Kamada approached him and told him to write down 7 things that were wrong with him. Kamada had given him a book on how to change himself to fit in with others. He called it self-analysis. Takeshi remembers feeling very confused when Kamada asked him to do it. He didn't understand why Kamada was so interested in helping him. Kamada had pretended to be very concerned about Takeshi, saying he wanted to help him because he was bullied too. Kamada said that reading the book and doing the exercises would change Takeshi's life for the better. Takeshi had felt hopeful and thought that he had found 2 friends who were willing to help him. He promised to give the book a try, thinking it would make things better. The next day, Takeshi had posted his work on the blackboard in the classroom, but due to his shock, Kamada was holding another book called Why Are We Deceived? Characteristics of People Who Were Too Trusting. Kamada started reading the book out loud, pointing out all of Takeshi's flaws. He said that Takeshi was too ugly, his hair too frizzy, he was fat, his nose was upturned, he was slow. The whole class was laughing at Takeshi. Kamada had publicly announced all of Takeshi's flaws and laughed at him. Takeshi felt so embarrassed and hurt. He watched helplessly as people made fun of him. Iwamoto had proudly said that the self-analysis was a masterpiece. When they read that Takeshi thought he was too kind, they mocked him even more. Takeshi had tried to explain that his sister had always told him he was too kind, but before he could finish, another classmate, Matsunaki, had kicked him hard in the back. Poor Takeshi had been bullied all his life. From kindergarten through high school, he had hoped that things would be better in high school, but they weren't. He cried bitterly because nothing had changed. Now, in the present, Takeshi looks at Kamada and Iwamoto with a serious expression. He tells them it's their turn to write now. They have to use the cloth in front of them. Takeshi slams down a screen between Kamada and Iwamoto so they can't see each other. They have to write without cheating. He warns them that if their answers don't match, he will have to punish them. Kamada starts to protest, saying they can't write while tied up, but then an orc steps forward and plucks Kamada's ear off like picking a fruit. They do the same to Iwamoto, causing blood to splurt from their ears. Takeshi tells them that they have to write with their fingers soaked in their own blood. He explained that they bullied him for years, and now he is just paying them back. He warns them to write neatly so he can read it. The first question is about the abilities of their classmates. Kamada and Iwamoto quickly scribble on their papers, answering all the questions. Takeshi reads both papers and decides to announce the results. An orc brings several pieces of chopped logs. Takeshi announces that for lying in their answers, they will be burnt at the stake. Iwamoto protests, saying he didn't lie. Takeshi points out that in the last question, they both wrote each other's names but not their own. So their answers don't match. Kamada calls Iwamoto a traitor, and Iwamoto says he was just trying to save himself. Despite the protests, both Kamada and Iwamoto are thrown into a pile of logs. Kamada calls Takeshi a pig and says he doesn't know anything about arson. Takeshi warns him not to call him a pig right now. Takeshi says that he won't do anything to them, but then points to the young girl whose father they had killed. The girl looks at them with hatred, holding a torch. Takeshi reminds her that her father was judged and burnt by them, so she would judge them the same way. The girl lights the logs with the torch, and they immediately catch fire. Kamada and Iwamoto scream in horror. Kamada tells Iwamoto to move less because he's making the fire spread faster, but but Iwamoto is rolling around because of the unbearable heat. Kamada blurts out that it was Yasuda who planned to set Takeshi's house on fire. Iwamoto tries to stop Kamada from revealing Yasuda's name, saying Yasuda will kill them, but Kamada knows that they will burn if he doesn't tell the truth. Kamada makes some shocking revelations. He says Yasuda was behind the fire, the bullying, and everything else. Kamada promises to tell Takeshi everything if he saves him from the fire. Iwamoto also offers to reveal everything. Takeshi whispers to the girl that their fates are in her hands. The girl approaches a pot full of clear liquid and lifts the ladle. Kamada and Iwamoto are relieved, thinking the fire will be put out with water. Kamada urges her to hurry. Iwamoto shouts that the ladle is not enough and she must bring more water. But when she throws the liquid, the fire grows bigger. They realize she threw gas oil instead of water. They beg for help, but the girl looks at them with no emotion. Meanwhile, Takeshi is filled with anger. He can't believe Yasuda is behind all of this. Yasuda was a popular student with good looks and grades. Takeshi remembers how Yasuda once greeted him warmly. Yasuda's family was powerful, and his mother worked as a housekeeper for them. One day, Takeshi found his sister lying on the road, hit by a car. He asked Yasuda for help, but Yasuda ignored him and drove away. Later, someone else took the blame for the hit and run, and the case was considered closed. Takeshi's sister's condition worsened after the accident. Takeshi was filled with rage and went to confront Yasuda. Yasuda admitted he was sorry. Not because of Takeshi's sister, but because he was late for an important meeting. Takeshi was shocked by Yasuda's coldness. Yasuda threatened Takeshi, saying his mother would lose her job if Takeshi made trouble. Takeshi felt helpless and watched Yasuda leave. From that moment, Takeshi was bullied even more. Now, as the mansion burns, Takeshi hears Yasuda's name echo in his mind. He remembers Yasuda smiling during his harassment. Takeshi vows to reach Yasuda and to make him pay. Takeshi counts the remaining classmates. Now, there are 29 left to face justice. Mayuka Sudama found the burnt bodies of Kimura and Iwamoto in the rubble. Yumeko and Keiko, her classmates, couldn't believe how horribly they had died. Yet they were enjoying apples while using the poor slaves as stools. They chatted casually about the unfortunate fate of their classmates. Sudama explained that when she used her search skills, the name of Kamada and Iwamoto appeared. Keiko admitted that someone must have attacked them in a very sneaky way. Sudama couldn't understand how Kamada and Iwamoto were supposed to be the heroes with special powers, and how they ended up like that. Keiko felt relieved, thinking the world was a better place without such sleazy people. Yumeko agreed and laughed. Takeshi was sneaking up on them, listening to the conversation. Keiko then threw her half-eaten apple onto the ground, calling it sour. Immediately, the hungry slaves rushed to grab the apple, showing how poorly they were being treated and how desperate they were for food. As they hungrily ate the apple, Sudama, Keiko, and Yumeko watched them in amusement. Takeshi watched the whole scene with a serious expression, remembering the time he was forced to eat rotten food from the ground. His face twisted in anger at the memory. Keiko couldn't believe Sudama had such a creepy cousin, referring to Yasuda. Sudama couldn't help it, saying that even though Yasuda was gross, he was still a hero. She urged Keiko to report to Yasuda when she died because no one knew what they might say. Takeshi realized that Yasuda was in charge of everything here. Sudama felt that looking for the culprit was too annoying, and Yumeko agreed with her. Sudama then raised her hand, showing a jewel embedded in her ring. She pointed her jeweled finger at a slave, and suddenly, the poor slave was in deep distress, screaming in pain. Sudama had a skill called Guilty Maker, which manipulated the water inside of a person's body. In no time, all the water was drained from the slave's body, leaving him dry as a twig. Sudama suggested that they could report Kamada and Iwamoto died in the president's revolt. If they decided to punish the culprits, there would be no one to steal credit from them. Yumeko praised Sudama for always being a great thinker and a high achiever. Sudama mocked Yumeko, saying she was closer to the bottom or a class dunce. The three ladies then declared in unison that the Heroes Rebel Army subjugation quest had finally begun. The slaves looked terrified and started to run away. Yumeko yelled at them to stop, saying slaves shouldn't run on two legs. She used her skill as a tamer to control the animals around her. In no time, the unfortunate slaves were attacked by a flock of crows, which pecked and hit them with their strong beaks. The crows ate the slaves until nothing was left but their miserable bodies lying on the ground. A little girl stood trembling on all fours, and Sudama decided to reward her, as she was the only one who didn't stand up. Keiko gave her an apple and swiftly kicked her in the face. Keiko used her jewel to activate her skill, Jewel Collector. She used the skill on the poor slave girl, who trembled and then crumpled in pain, and in no time, the girl exploded. She left nothing behind except for a jewel amidst the scattered flesh and blood. Keiko had the ability to turn creatures she touched into jewels. However, Keiko was disappointed by the small size of the jewel. Yumeko laughed, saying Keiko should have checked the size of the girl first. They didn't know that Takeshi was watching them furiously from behind the bushes. He noticed that these women blackmailed others and turned them into slaves. Even if someone died, they didn't care at all. Takeshi remembered that this was what they used to do in the real world too. A painful memory came to his mind when Sudama had shown him a picture of him holding his weak sister. She twisted the situation, making it seem like that wasn't the case. Sudama explained that she saw the whole thing on the train the previous day and took the picture. Takeshi clarified that the girl was his little sister. Yumeko laughed wickedly, calling him a sister lover. A naive Takeshi kept explaining that he would never do anything bad to his sister and that he was just supporting her when she stumbled. Sudama apologized for her insensitive behavior, saying she knew how much he cared for his sister. As an apology, Sudama promised that his sister would look nice. It was revealed that Takeshi's sister, Fumina Hirota, was a 14-year-old second-year student who was often absent from school and had few friends. Takeshi was alarmed by how much Sudama knew about his sister, but her last cruel remark left him flustered when she suggested introducing Fumina to the boys in their class, saying she wanted Fumina to play with them a lot. When Takeshi gritted his teeth in anger, Sudama showed him a video, blackmailing him. Takeshi pleaded with her to stop involving his sister in this mess, but Sudama wanted him to act like a dog if he wanted anything. Sudama cruelly announced to Keiko and Yumeko that Takeshi would repeat the following. This lowly pig Takeshi is sorry for going against them, and would follow any order they gave. A tearful but helpless Takeshi went on all fours and repeated the humiliating sentence for Fumina's sake. As he hit his hands on the ground in frustration, Sudama remarked that he seemed happy to be promoted from a pig to a slave. From that day onward, he became their unpaid slave. Another painful memory struck Takeshi when the three girls, wearing swimsuits, made him wear 2 backpacks full of rocks, one on his front and one on his back. They put him in the background and commanded him to dive into the water to create a huge splash for their selfies. Because of the heavy load, Takeshi was seconds late diving into the water, which spoiled the girls' selfies and already their bad moods. Next, they hung him upside down from a window on the top floor with a rope. They then cut the rope to watch him fall for fun. Takeshi landed on a thorny bush, causing him great pain. In the present, Takeshi banged his fist fiercely on the ground, thinking that the 3 girls were unforgivable. Meanwhile, Sudama suggested that they head home and write a letter to Yasuda later. The girls were fed up with the old-fashioned communication system of this world, as they were used to emails and other modern communication methods. They still couldn't believe their accomplices, Kamada and Iwamoto, were burnt like Takeshi's sister. The last line added fuel to the already burning anger in Takeshi's heart. Takeshi angrily vowed that since they had targeted his sister, he would never forgive them. He began to think that from the way the girls were talking, it seemed Yasuda was not in this town. According to the information he got from Iwamoto, the rest of the classmates might be in other towns. So even if he managed to deal with these 3 girls, no one would come to help them. He resolved to give these 3 girls the worst punishment of their lives and kill them. Soon, the 3 girls arrived at their mansion, only to suddenly be confronted by Takeshi. Both Keiko and Yumeko were not happy to see him, thinking the number of ugly people had increased. They wondered if Takeshi had come back to be their slave again. Sudama was furious and wondered how Takeshi had the courage to call out their names. She scanned him and sarcastically chuckled that, as usual, the useless pig had an unknown skill. Both Yumeko and Keiko threw hurtful comments at him, but this time, Takeshi calmly informed him that he was just a decoy. Before the girls could understand, a giant orc appeared, grabbed a wheel of their carriage, and overturned it. For the first time, a wave of terror crossed their faces as they were horribly thrown out of the carriage. Sudama quickly composed herself and tried to use her skill, Guilty Maker, by raising her hand with the jewel. but one of the orcs smashed her hand, chopping off her fingers. Keiko immediately used her taming skill to summon crows to attack the orcs, but the orc grabbed a bird and used its beak to pierce Keiko's face, catching her off guard. The orc tried to squeeze her ear to destroy the jewel containing her taming skill. Yumeko saw what was happening to her friends and tried to use her jewel collector skill on Takeshi. But before she could, an orc grabbed her by the back of her neck and snatched her necklace, which had the jewel containing her skill. One of the girls was disarmed of their powers. The orcs tied them up on wooden stretchers and invited the townspeople to take their revenge. When Sudama tried to protest, she saw the angry mob. Takeshi warned her to stay quiet, or else she would be in even more danger. The wooden stretchers were tilted, putting the girls face to face with the commoners who had suffered because of their cruelty. The people were armed with makeshift weapons, ready to deliver justice. Sudama, in a panic, demanded to know who these people were. Takeshi calmly replied that these were the families of the people the girls had deemed ugly and disgusting. The people they had tormented and enslaved. Takeshi offered the girls a chance to save themselves by answering a question correctly. If they answered truthfully, their boards wouldn't be tilted further. Takeshi asked them about the whereabouts of Yasuda. Each of the girls shouted different answers, arguing over who had answered first. Takeshi declared all of their answers invalid. The boards were tilted more, causing the girls to hang precariously over the edge. A horrified look crossed their faces, the look that the oppressed people had always wanted to see on the faces of their tormentors. The townspeople began to step forward, brandishing their weapons, ready to strike. Takeshi signals the crowd for another round of questions, a sort of quiz, and warns them that if the three girls don't answer correctly this time, the crowd will surely be allowed to deal with them. The angry mob starts to chant wildly, demanding that Takeshi drop the girls to them. Takeshi tells the crowd that the others have been questioned before, and their answers were often, "I don't know," especially when it came to information about Yasuda. Takeshi is confident that Sumada and the others will cooperate fully. Sudama blurts out that Yasuda is in the north, building a new capital for himself. She explains that there isn't a specific place yet, but Takeshi could find him by traveling 10 days along the northern highway. Sudama begs to be let down, claiming her fingers are torn and she's in great pain. However, Takeshi signals an orc to drop Keiko first. When Keiko protests, Takeshi reminds her of the cruel treatment she gave him and other innocent people because she didn't look nice. Tears of fear and remorse begin to flow from Keiko's eyes as she admits her mistakes. Takeshi points out her now distorted face, saying that even she would be considered ugly now. With that, Keiko is flung at the mob and lands among them with a thud. One of the women in the crowd tearfully tells Keiko that her husband was a very kind man, whom Keiko took away from her. With that, she angrily stabs Keiko in the back with a spear. Blood splurts out, and Keiko screams in agony, sending chills down the spines of her accomplices. Another woman strikes her, demanding the return of her son. Soon, all the women are upon Keiko, tormented by her, demanding that she return to their loved ones. Takeshi watches as Keiko's body lies lifelessly in a pool of her own blood. He marvels at the thought of how fancy Keiko considered herself, and wonders if this would make people talk about her. He then turns to Yumiko and Sudama, asking who wants to be next. Both women tremble in fear, a stark contrast to their earlier arrogance. Yumiko, trying to save herself, offers her services to Takeshi, assuming he is still innocent and untouched by their cruelty. A solemn Takeshi reminds her that she is always calling him creepy. Frantically, Yumiko tries to explain that she only called him creepy as a joke and didn't mean it. Takeshi makes it clear that any contact with Yumiko is creepy to him. A tearful Yumiko cannot believe her ears, feeling the pain of her hands being tied up. Takeshi reminds her that she once said creepy people have no value. So now, he sees her as having no value to him. Yumiko goes wild with anxiety, repeatedly denying that she is creepy, but it's too late. The orcs tilt her board, and off she goes into the furious mob. As she lands among the crowd, she begs them to spare her, offering gold and jewels in return. The woman in the crowd solemnly demands only her life. They stab spears into Yumiko's body. Her eyes roll in pain and misery as her life comes to an end. Sudama is terrified by the sight. Takeshi is ready to ask Sudama the next question. However, Sudama reminds him that she has already answered his previous questions correctly and should be set free. Takeshi hesitates, saying he still has many questions he wants to know about Yasuda's skill. An anxious look crosses Sudama's face. She pauses, lowers her gaze, and says she doesn't know anything about it. Takeshi signals the orcs to lower her board. A horrified Sudama insists that she knows nothing about Yasuda's skill. She reveals that some heroes deliberately hide their skills. Takeshi doesn't believe her, knowing Sudama's search skills can easily find out another's skills. Sudama explains that her search skill doesn't work when the target's level is too high, like Yasuda's. Takeshi decides to skip that question and asks about the fire set in his house. He demands to know her role in the crime. Sudama breaks into a cold sweat and blurts out that she doesn't have any part in that plan. Takeshi glares at her and tilts her board, yelling that he already knows she and her gang were involved. He urges her to speak quickly, or she will be dropped. Sudama screams for him to stop, saying she is ready to tell everything. She begins by saying that she, Keiko, and Yumiko went to his house on the day of the fire to deliver cream puffs as a get-well gift for his sister. However, those cream puffs were laced with sleeping drugs, just as Yasuda told them to do. A flabbergasted Takeshi asks about what kind of drugs they used. Sudama assures him they were just sleeping drugs. Takeshi furiously yells at her for being so insensitive because those drugs led to his sister's death. The crowd begins to chant menacingly, urging Takeshi to drop Sudama so they can kill her. Sudama wails in fear and begs, saying she doesn't want to die. Suddenly, she gets an idea and yells that the city has been invaded by orcs, trying to turn the crowd against Takeshi and his allies. Even Takeshi is caught off guard by this outburst. As the crowd's attention shifts, Sudama continues screaming that the orcs are vile creatures and will soon attack everyone. There is a slight tension among the crowd, as orcs are indeed feared creatures among humans. Sudama gives a victorious smile to Takeshi, thinking she has outsmarted him. But then, something unexpected happens. The orcs immediately remove their hoods, revealing their true selves. The crowd is stunned, and so is Sudama. Takeshi bellows at the crowd, asking whether to choose to kill the orcs or Sudama. In no time, the crowd wildly chants for Sudama's death. Takeshi reminds Sudama that she has always been the most hated person in the school. He reveals that he lied about knowing her involvement in the fire, and that her life might have been spared if she had told the truth. But now it's too late. With that, he tilts the board completely, sending Sudama sliding into the furious crowd. After Sudama, Takeshi has 26 more classmates to deal with. The angry crowd batters and thrashes Sudama with their weapons, demanding that she return their loved ones. They call her a plague, not a hero. All three girls meet their horrifying ends. Takeshi and his team of orcs confirm with the crowd that they are now at peace. He knows that orcs are usually seen as vermin by humans, but he cannot rest until his whole class is dealt with. The crowd supports Takeshi and begs him to kill the remaining heroes, especially Yasuda. Takeshi becomes emotional at the love and compassion he receives from the people. Earlier, he was always humiliated and insulted. Now, he raises his hand and declares that the hero will be dealt with. With tears in his eyes, Takeshi realizes that he is finally being accepted by the people as a human. Next, the townspeople help Takeshi prepare to fight Yasuda. After gathering some information about his classmates, they all decide to set traps in case a classmate comes by. Meanwhile, the orcs have built a superb pit. They quickly prove to humans that they can be as helpful and harmless as any normal person. Takeshi is delighted as the image of orcs in people's hearts becomes more positive. In the austere estate of the great and malicious Yasuda Takanari, slaves are being treated as mercilessly as ever. Yasuda, dressed magnificently, watches the scene with disdain, thinking that both the previous world and this one are full of incompetence. It is revealed that he is talking about Sudama and her gang, who were responsible for collecting some materials but haven't reported back yet. He plans to discipline them once they return. He commands a hero to check on the nearby town where they are supposed to be, and gives them 2 days to do the job. After 2 days, the designated hero, Hifumi, reaches the town and is surprised to find Takeshi. As usual, Hifumi insults Takeshi, calling him a pig and mocking him for having an unknown skill in being at the bottom. He addresses him as Sudama's slave and orders him to take him to her. Takeshi shrugs and complies. Soon, a confused Hifumi follows him. Takeshi leads him to a room where a trap is waiting. As soon as Hifumi enters, someone cuts a rope. A huge rock falls on him instantly. Hifumi didn't know he was in a double trap, a boulder and a pit full of stakes and electric eels. If one falls, they get stuck on the stakes. If they miss, the electric eels will paralyze them. Takeshi feels victorious, thinking they can always win by surprising the heroes. But little does he know, a surprise is waiting for him as well. Suddenly, an orc's head bursts in front of him. Fire arrows rain down, causing mass destruction everywhere. Someone yells that a hero is using his skills. A frantic Takeshi freaks out, urging his companions to hide behind buildings, but explosions are happening everywhere, demolishing everything in their path. As Takeshi and his team scramble to find cover, the situation becomes chaotic. Takeshi was clueless about the sudden attack that killed everyone. Amidst the attack, an orc shielded Takeshi with his body to protect him and pushed him away from the fire. They both fell, and the orc got hurt. So right after that, Takeshi quickly stood up and asked about the well-being of the orc. But the orc's eye caught something that was coming their way. He swiftly grabbed Takeshi by his clothes. He threw him away, sending him flying away. Takeshi was shocked. While the orc was injured, he stayed back. Takeshi landed on the other side on the ground. He quickly stood up and was worried sick. The whole town was raided with fire attacks. The orc screamed from the oncoming fire. Takeshi shouted in anger as he witnessed what was happening. Uchida, who pulled himself up from that hole, cursing at Takeshi. Takeshi's eyes went wide in surprise to see him alive, and he looked afar at that destruction. Then, Uchida smirked, saying,
This was Yasuda's doing,
explaining that he should have waited a bit before attacking. But he was confused about why Takeshi didn't say anything. Suddenly, Takeshi realized and roared in rage as he darted away in another direction. Uchida was shouting at him, trying to stop him, though his clothes were stuck under the rock. As Takeshi ran away, Uchida cursed at the situation he was in. He cursed Takeshi as he left him there. At another place, while walking on the ground, Takeshi was exhausted as he walked. He had no clue how many days had passed since he ran away, and he was lost there. Regretful thoughts started to fill his head. Thoughts about the mistake of believing that the power of the orcs and the human wisdom could win. He doubted himself to win against that kind of skill. After all, he had none. Then a memory of his happy days with those orcs who accepted him came to his mind. And he blamed himself when they died, because of his quest for revenge. He burst into sobs as he cried in anguish. He asked himself, How could I show my face if I returned to the orc village? He smiled, while sniffling. His cries, in between sobs, he kept murmuring to himself, This terrible pig face. That's right. Next, as he walked, he tripped and screamed. He fell on his back with a groan. Suddenly, his eyes widened as an arrow came to his face. When he looked up, he saw some kind of warrior woman holding a bow at him. He couldn't believe what he saw. It was an elf. Then she asked him if he was a human or an orc. And he was shocked when she asked him why he had the thing, so he looked at what she was referring to. It was that necklace on the ground. After he filled her in, she knew he was the one who took revenge for Kataki Carellia and recovered that necklace. But he was tired as he ate slowly. Then she informed him that Carellia had told her about him. His eyes widened in surprise when he asked her, Carellia said I'm a human, not an orc? So she told him that he was a good human being, remembering the time when Carellia asked her to teach her the human language so she could talk with Takeshi. She sighed because she warned her not to talk with humans. As they mentioned her, Takeshi got emotional. He remembered her soft smile, so his eyes filled with tears. As he apologized for crying, the elf wanted to introduce herself. She told him that her name was Lagoda, the warrior chief of elven villages, so he smiled softly at her. Later on, Lagoda told him she could speak the human language. As she sat beside him, she explained that it was necessary to beat their opponents, so they learned it. Takeshi picked something up from the grass as he held up the necklace, wanting to offer it to Carellia's grave. So he asked, Do you know where I can find it? She was gazing at him, but she stood up and requested a favor before he could continue. leaving him surprised. Later on, some savages forced themselves on poor elves while others were tied up on some tree, unaware that Takeshi and Lagoda hid behind some bushes as they watched carefully. Then, Lagoda told him that this was her elf village. As that man took advantage of that girl, she was sobbing, gagged at the mouth, though he enjoyed her suffering. Lagoda snapped, reminding Takeshi how he had slain 3 heroes, only for Shinjiro Saito and his goblins to seize control of their village. She urged Takeshi to defeat Saito and rescue their village. They were both fuming while Lagoda cursed him. Then she recounted how the girl, unable to move after being assaulted, faced being thrown to the beasts by the goblins. She described how they cruelly tossed the elf from the cliff to the waiting animals. They watched her being attacked. Then she told him that the goblins hunt the beasts that come to eat the bodies of the elves and were used as food. Next to him, Lagoda was fuming because they only saw them as toys and bait, and all of that fueled Takeshi's rage. Lagoda was so frustrated when she attacked him. The goblins stopped her arrows, guessing it was Saito's skill to manipulate them. So she roared in rage, asking for his help. Yet Takeshi lost the words, surprised. Then he whispered, "I was able to kill 3 of them before because I had orcs with me." He balled up his fists, ashamed as he confessed. "But now they're gone. I can't do it." Clenching his teeth, he admitted with a pained face, "By myself, I don't have any skills." After that admission, Lagoda gazed at him. He was embarrassed, so he whispered, "I just wanted to go to Carellia's grave." They went to her grave. Standing from afar, Lagoda told him she buried her on that hill. Yet she warned him not to go close because of those goblins. After all, they would see him. Next, she explained to him that all of the elves' spirits would return to the forest, but Carellia was special. As he looked at her confused about what she meant by special, she told him about the day she was away from the village on business, and then she remembered when she returned that things went to hell. She recalled when the whole town was destroyed and the people there were dead. As she ran towards Carellia, holding her body while shaking her to wake up. Carellia murmured. Lagoda held her, realizing her impending death. Despite this, Carellia asked to be buried on the hill with a tree to watch over the village. Then, she remembered something else. She remembered her time with Takeshi. In the end, she stopped moving. She died, while Lagoda was holding her. This story stunned him. He held her necklace, and he whispered, "At the end, she said my name." He started to sob, while holding on to her dear necklace. He felt great pain for losing her as he cried. Lagoda stood next to him, silent. Thus, she told him that Carellia loved everyone and everything, and in return, she was loved. The tears didn't stop coming down his face. As they stood there, Lagoda mourned for Carellia and the survivors. She revealed the thief of the necklace and the discovery of more bodies, simmering with anger. Later, upon finding the goblin man, her rage boiled over. She hit the ground mercilessly. She breathed heavily. Takeshi was gazing at her, worried when she kept speaking about Carellia and his love for her. With a shocked face, she asked him to save the village Carellia loved, and that really surprised him. But he lowered his head, thinking, though he didn't say anything. Lagoda shouted at him, thinking that he had refused. Then, her eyes widened when he said, "I need to come up with a plan." Takeshi was determined to do this, and Lagoda was all along with him. Later on at night, they stayed there in that forest. They were in the middle of their talk, when suddenly, they turned around, shocked when someone screamed. Saito roared, eager to reach town despite feeling his skills were diminished. Craving holding a woman, food, and a better life, He vented his frustration by kicking one of the goblins repeatedly for failing to enter the town and providing him with what he desired. From the bushes, Takeshi and Lagoda eyed him carefully. Saito eventually stopped his kicks. As he finished his kicks, Saito sighed in relief, feeling better. Needing to relieve himself, he went to take a piss and noticed some sticks on Carellia's grave. Seeing them as a convenient target, he unbuckled his pants. Lagoda and Takeshi watched, fuming, as Saito urinated. Suddenly, Takeshi darted towards him, shouting,
Saito!
Lagoda was shouting at him to stop, though. With a glance, Saito roared.
Big! Why are you here?
On his way, Takeshi ordered Lagoda to shoot him. She swiftly took out her bow and arrow, firing as Takeshi continued running. The arrows missed Saito, but he struck the goblins, angering him as they died from simple projectiles. He screamed for Takeshi to stop, but it was too late. Takeshi was already in front of him. Next, Takeshi charged Saito, sending him crashing to the ground with a groan. They both collapsed from the impact. But then, Saito stood up and cursed him. With a mocking tone, he shouted,
The bottom has suddenly come out! You can't go against me!
Yet, Takeshi's eyes darkened as he whispered, Hey, Saito. He faced him, and he told him that where he urinated was the place of his beloved sister. He shouted in fury,
There is no place for you here! The most hated one!
In front of him, Saito snarled,
Don't mess with me!
As Takeshi confronted him, he whispered to Saito, Beneath the hill, where the most loved one sleeps, me and you all, the most hated ones, will fight. Stunning Lagoda and thrilling the goblins. Unyielding, Takeshi declared, Let's go. It's a battle to decide who's at the bottom. Shivers ran relentlessly down Saito's spine. After his anger overflowed, he advanced without any thought of what would happen next, while Lagoda remained behind, trying to slay the goblins with her arrows. There were many of them. She wanted to finish them quickly so she could join Takeshi, hoping he would hold out until then. Meanwhile, Takeshi was ready for the duel. Let's do this. The battle to decide who's at the bottom. Suddenly, he shouted and rushed towards him. Saito stood still, waiting for Takeshi to approach him. But from his sly smile, it seemed he was hiding something. Suddenly, he gave a signal and a goblin emerged from the grass, surprising Takeshi. The small creature quickly attached to his stomach and threw him to the ground. Saito then approached him and began to speak mockingly.
What battle for the bottom? Idiot, there's no contest here. Moreover, when I searched on you, there was no skill or level.
Then he spoke arrogantly and told him that with his skill and level, there's no way he could beat him. Then, suddenly, he advanced and kicked him hard in the face. Takeshi fell to the ground forcefully, and here, Saito started to laugh. Saito, overwhelmed by the violence and his sense of victory, told him that he had never had the chance to hit him in the perfect world, unlike everyone else. He then began to shout excitedly.
Let's have some fun.
Meanwhile, Takeshi was in pain. Takeshi was lost, trying to find anything to help him get out of the situation. And suddenly, he heard some sounds coming from inside the forest. He noticed eyes appearing in the darkness. Takeshi, surprised, tried to get up with difficulty and ran towards that person. However, Saito didn't like his actions and chased after him, thinking he was trying to escape, and stopped him with a kick to the back.
Do you not care about being at the bottom?
Lagoda noticed this and shouted his name from afar. She urged him to show her the strength that defeats heroes. Saito didn't understand her words. Lagoda tried to boost his confidence, reminding him of how he defeated those who had conquered the Demon King. Saito stood there puzzled.
The pig? Not at the bottom?
Then he told her not to be silly. In an angry tone, he said,
This pig, you're lower than me.
He viciously stomped on his head while shouting,
You're definitely lower than me.
Lagoda watched his brutality from a distance as he screamed,
Pig, 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 bottom, bottom, bottom.
Repeatedly stomping his head. After knocking him to the ground, Saito began to laugh, then picked up a nearby stick to show him that he couldn't finish him. In a tired tone, Takeshi said, "Thank you." Saito didn't understand what he meant by that. Then he continued, "Thank you for being alive," smiling and thanking the orc again. Saito, still confused, tried to quickly strike him with the stick, but the orc hit him from behind without him noticing, knocking him to the ground and snatching the ring from his hand. Saito turned to see who had hit him and was surprised.
An orc?
Takeshi then told him that they were friends, and that the orc had helped him kill his friends. Orcs have good noses, which allowed him to track Saito. Takeshi explained to him that he had seen Saito in the forest when he hit him, giving him the idea to run so he could approach him from behind. He climbed the hill to turn Saito's back to him. Saito was trembling and remarked that pigs get along well. The orc approached while Saito began screaming in fear.
No!
He quickly fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Saito surrendered, crying with regret.
I apologize for everything I've done. Please spare my life.
He went on to claim that they were the same. Takeshi watched him sternly, but Saito had no good intentions. Irritated by the orc's presence, he was trying to buy time until the rest of the goblins arrived. Kneeling, Saito continued.
I didn't want to be bullied either. I had no choice. Otherwise, I would have been bullied. Just a little more.
He was stalling for time, while Takeshi watched him, unaware of his hidden objective. The goblins approached from behind, and Saito's expression changed to a wicked grin. He laughed and shouted,
Idiot! Look behind you! Your own stupid strategy! I'll give it right back to you, pig!
He raised his hand and commanded,
Attack those two pigs, my goblins!
though suddenly, he froze in place, noticing his ring was missing. One of the goblins bit off his hand, causing him to scream in pain. His hand bled as he angrily ordered,
Fools! Not me! Attack the pig!
Takeshi then asked him if he didn't notice. He picked up the ring from the ground and told Saito if he hadn't noticed that its jewel had fallen moments ago. Saito went mad upon seeing his ring with Takeshi. He sobbed and asked the goblins,
Why are you going after me? Didn't I let you do whatever you wanted with the elves? Are you betraying that kindness?
He realized his words were useless as he gazed at the look of one of the goblins, recalling how Saito had treated him before. Saito tried to calm him down, but it was no use as they all attacked him together. Takeshi noticed that the goblins bore more of a grudge against Saito than anyone else, and then asked Saito, What is a goblin in this world? Which monster is at the bottom? He continued, You and the goblins, the battle for the bottom. The result is clear. After the goblins attacked Saito, he was left in a pitiable state, bleeding from his body and unaware of what had suddenly happened. While the goblins surrounded him, they noticed something that made them tremble with fear. It was Lagoda, who had come to join them, pointing her arrow towards Saito, who was unable to do anything. Lagoda prepared to fire one of the arrows at him, avenging all the elves he had killed. Saito tried to stop her, shouting, but it was in vain. 25 people left. After they finished with Saito, Takeshi stood, looking at Carellia's grave. Lagoda approached him and called him a savior, though Takeshi didn't like that and asked her to stop calling him that. She told him it was true because he had saved her village, but he wasn't satisfied and replied sadly, There were some lives that I couldn't save. Lagoda then changed the subject and asked him, since he was leaving today, if he still couldn't approach her grave. He replied, I'm just an avenger. I hate the people whose lives I take. He couldn't erase the image of Carellia and her innocent smile from his mind, which saddened him even more. He then told Lagoda that Carellia was the exact opposite of him. After all, she poured love into everything, so he felt he had no right to approach her. Lagoda finally understood his way of thinking. She grabbed him by the clothes and walked, pushing him along. she showed him her village and told him this was the world Carellia loved. But everything changed after the heroes arrived. And she added that thanks to him and his revenge, which reduced the number of heroes, their village was saved. She then told him that Carellia loved the world as it was before and sincerely wished for the world to return to how her friend loved it. She then raised her weapon with determination and asked Takeshi to kill the heroes together. Takeshi was initially surprised, but quickly regained his composure and told her that his revenge was a personal grudge. Lagoda didn't mind. She told him the result would still be the same. Takeshi didn't know what to do. But then, he made his decision. From here on, we will be taking more and more revenge. We will bring back the world that you loved. If we can connect them, even if just a little, that would be nice. They then stood in front of her grave for a few more moments, bidding her farewell before beginning their new journey together. The three of them, the orc, Lagoda, and Takeshi. They turned their backs and set off to continue their revenge, while Takeshi pondered deeply from within himself. I don't have the power to save the world, but we're brave enough to finish Yasuda. Meanwhile, inside the palace, a trembling servant appeared as Yasuda read the report. Takeshi. Has he metastasized? He recognized Takeshi's strength and then smiled. After all, he knew Takeshi was not competent enough. He noted that Takeshi was without talent. Rising near the window, he pondered Ushida's report, which stated that Takeshi had killed some of their classmates. Yasuda couldn't believe it and thought Ushida must have made a mistake. He continued to look up at the group of people he had captured and bound. Despite their attempts to resist, he was thinking that pests should be exterminated. With a snap of his fingers, his power attacked them from above, burning everyone outside. Yasuda merely watched them scream in pain. Then, he began to talk to himself. A classmate who cannot be saved. Helpless savages. A garbage world with no place worth loving. The only thing in this world that has worth is just me. Suppression order for Takeshi Hirota has been issued. Yasuda, on his killing spree, found out about Takeshi and ordered his servant to deal with him. He wanted to exterminate him. Meanwhile, on the other side where Takeshi, Lagoda, and the orc met, she voiced her unease about lacking sufficient fighting power. Her concern made Takeshi sweat nervously, so she gave him a look and asked him about how he planned to take on those heroes. Thus he told her, "They're careless. Sneak in, take them by surprise, and steal their jewels." However, she pointed out that if he was alone, someone must have spilled out Uchida's attack, a detail he hadn't thought of. So it gave her an idea as she smiled at him. She speculated that maybe it was the dwarves who leaked the information. She heard the dwarves in the area were oppressed by a hero and didn't get along with elves. But if it was against a hero, she believed they could team up and fight together. Plus, Lagoda understood human language and could translate. After that, they went on their way. When they arrived at their destination, they were shocked to see some people kneeling on the ground. This made Lagoda snap, asking what had happened. One of the dwarves answered, but whispered, "An elf?" Lagoda didn't confirm, so the dwarf kneeling beside her urged her to leave. Frustrated but unable to walk away, Lagoda sat down beside him and asked for their story. Yet, met with silence, her worry deepened. Lagoda suspected the heroes. When she brought them up, the dwarf tensed, making her ask for answers. So he asked if Lagoda would go back with them. This made her pause. Finally, he revealed how the heroes had kidnapped all the women and children from their village. The heroes were stopped by two girls. They promised the villagers safety for the hostages if they kept mining gold for them. This eased the villagers' fears, but they were still coerced into mining and forced into submissive poses. After stating, "Also, if you get involved, you too will be stolen." This confused Lagoda. He clarified, "Anything you can hold in your hand,
For example,
He suddenly lifted his head, revealing his missing eye. This shocking sight left them stunned. In their submissive posture, the dwarf warned them against getting involved. This made Lagoda think. She then disclosed that her village was once ruled by a hero, but Takeshi had killed that hero and freed the village, surprising the dwarf. He couldn't grasp it, but they were dead set on taking down those evil heroes. She wondered if they'd take their help. Still, she was more concerned with the hostages. She needed solid assurance that they were safe. This had the dwarf even more worried, so she urged them to hurry up, warning that otherwise nothing would change. He clenched his hands, determined. Then he shouted,
We want to end the heroes.
They couldn't trust them, so he insisted.
I want to make sure my daughters are safe.
They pleaded with them, because he wanted to see his wife. He hit the ground in anguish. Lagoda gazed at him with determination. Suddenly, something spilled on the ground. The missing eye dwarf was in tears, wanting to ask for something else. He pleaded,
My daughter and grandson. Please, save them.
They all sympathized with him, so they promised to do so. Later on, as they watched some cabin, they noticed there were no guards. According to the dwarves' intel, there should be hostages inside, so Lagoda and Takeshi looked through the window, but found it empty, leaving them stunned and worried. Suddenly, they heard someone speak. From that window sat Sayumi Ito from the Resource Bureau, and smiled happily about the deal she had made from selling the female dwarf. Beside her, Sanae Yamashita remarked on the profits from their recent surge in the slave cells. With a wicked smile, she hoped they could create their own haven. Takeshi and Lagoda seethed with anger upon hearing their words, while Ito laughed at those male dwarves. She mocked them for trying to work. They recalled the time when they sold that female hostage to someone, just to use her as they hoped she would show up in the monster show. After that, they burst out laughing for having no clue about anything and without caring about their actions. As they kept on, Takeshi and Lagoda were about to explode from their anger. They felt sick from seeing the evil deeds of these women. Consumed by rage for the harm they caused, it reminded Takeshi of a past incident when he was walking and someone accused another person of being a pervert, causing everyone to stop and look. Travelers stared at a guy who denied wrongdoing, pissing off the girls, yet Takeshi ignored and walked on. But Ito snapped at the pervert for lying and she accused him of touching her, which he denied in terror. Takeshi stepped in, catching Ito's attention. He defended the guy, explaining he had been holding onto the sling the whole time, not touching anyone. Yet Sanae persisted with her accusation to the officer. Sensing deception, the officer questioned her about her previous claim, so they faltered, unable to respond. Time passed. Sanae was pissed then, apologizing to the officer, admitting she might have been mistaken. Confusion filled the air as she sobbed, while Takeshi watched, surprised and shocked as she sniffed her cries. However, they both looked in Takeshi's direction. Their eyes were dark with bad intentions. He felt their dark stares. So later on, after a few days, inside the school, someone sounded worried. Ito was searching for her missing gym clothes, feeling sad. Her classmate gazed at her, appearing concerned, but then Sanae glanced at Takeshi, then hinted at his bulging coat pocket. Quickly, Sanae searched Takeshi's pockets while he was stunned. She pulled out a shirt with wide eyes, yet Takeshi couldn't believe it, and the girl stared at him angrily. He stood up scared, denying any wrongdoing and trying to calm her down. Then, he faced Ito's snapping accusation. Sanae suggested Takeshi had been staring at Ito lately, and Ito whispered to another girl about losing another item. Nerves ate at Takeshi as he shouted, "No! That's a lie!" They glared at him darkly, causing him to look away. Takeshi sweated, even more afraid, as one of the girls even wished him dead. The teacher barged in, demanding to know the fuss. Quickly, the girl accused Takeshi of stealing Ito's clothes, shocking him. The teacher pulled Takeshi away, asking Ito to join. With a pleading face, Takeshi shouted, "That's not true, sir!" Though the teacher didn't care, he dragged Takeshi to the staff room. Glancing back, Takeshi saw Ito and Sanae smirking at him. That was payback for meddling in their earlier false accusation, leaving Takeshi stunned. After the teacher scolded him, Takeshi felt beaten because no one believed him. Being blamed every time something got lost only added to his frustration. To make things worse, the police contacted his family, and his mom and sister suffered, so he had hit rock bottom. His family paid for the mean girl's lies. Remembering their cruelty, he snarled.
I absolutely can't forgive them. Ever.
After that, Lagoda and the orc figured that Iwamoto Kamada and the dwarves gave them intel. They could guess their skills, so that they would win. Later on, Ito and Sanane felt very tired and wanted to hit the hay. All of a sudden, one of them heard some noise coming from the door. She went to check it. As she twisted the knob to open it, they were knocked down as Takeshi and the orc used a huge tree to snap the door in two. They had no clue what was going on. They were surprised to see him with an orc. Lagoda shot arrows. Sanae panicked, and Ito skillfully caught one mid-air. The technique was called Gilgamel. Takeshi recognized Ito's thieving abilities until she remembered the dwarves from the mine, so she urged Sanae to call them and disrupt the situation with the heroes. Thus, quickly, Sanae looked at the wall where something was hung, and before she could grab it, Takeshi used his weapon to drag her back to the ground, as she groaned, surprised. She fell hard. Takeshi quickly seized their hair-filled sack, confronting Sanae. Shakily, she rose, her anxiety evident. Takeshi knew it wasn't about hair manipulation. Sanae's power extended further. A touch turned them into her puppets, enraging her. Facing off, Takeshi lifted his weapon against them. Lifting his weapon, he snarled. So, are you ready? Ito and Sanae were scared for their lives. However, Ito smiled darkly. Takeshi felt his weapon being pulled from his grasp, and suddenly, Ito used her powers to take it from him. Takeshi cursed, his eyes wide with worry as a piece of hair appeared entwined in his weapon. Ito saw it clearly, a wicked smile on her face as she touched that hair. She then realized something. She asked if it was Takeshi's hair, then accepted it with a dark smile. With the tables turned, Sanae vowed punishment. Screaming in madness, she compelled him to take out his own eye. Though, that wasn't quite the case. Someone was bleeding, and Sanae looked shocked as she glanced beside her. She froze as she saw Ito holding her eye in her hand, and immediately, Ito started to scream after she had lost her eye. Unexpectedly, something happened that surprised both girls. Sayumi was the one who plucked out her own eye, not Takeshi. She screamed in pain and fell to the ground, while Sanae was shocked by what had occurred. Takeshi voiced the question on their mind. Why did I have her hair? Every day, many of them come out naturally. He explained that on their way, the orc had sniffed them, dyed it black, and tied it to the spear. He pointed out that there was a clear difference in thickness between men and women's hair. He said, "Yet you still didn't notice." Sanae was very upset and couldn't believe what had happened to her. She then screamed at the top of her lungs, calling him a pig, and charged at him in a fit of rage because he had referred to her as you. But the orc quickly intervened, stopped her attack, and pushed her away with a large wooden plank, sending her crashing into the wall. The place fell silent after Sanae was subdued. They decided to change their location, and by morning, with the rising sun, Sanae was still unconscious. As soon as the sunlight touched her body, she woke up. She found herself tied to a plank along with her friend, isolated. Takeshi noticed she was awake. "Finally awake?" he said. She heard his voice and was surprised. Sayumi woke up, crying and complaining about her pain. Sanae then asked him what he was going to do with them. He stood before them and repeated, "What should I do?" At that moment, a group of angry dwarves appeared, holding stones in their hands and glaring at Sanae with hatred. One of the dwarves stepped forward and said, "You stole our eyes many times. My ears were stolen, and some have had their organs stolen. The same number that have been stolen with the same size stone." Sayumi couldn't contain herself and started crying and screaming for forgiveness, but no one listened. All the dwarves began placing the stones into the nets that were tied around their hands. The stones were large and heavy, dragging Sayumi's hands down. Both girls started screaming in pain. Lagoda then asked them not to make a fuss, because the dwarves were always conducting the delivery. as she had imposed such a foolish quota. The dwarves continued filling their net with stones, and Takeshi cautioned them to be careful and not touch Yasuda directly, because she would use her skill. Sanae was irritated by his caution. Takeshi then told them that it didn't matter how much Lagoda invested, because she had only found Ito's jewel. Lagoda then clarified, explaining that she had no choice but to hit her with a stick, since she couldn't ignore her ability and touch her carelessly. Sanae, frustrated by their plan, screamed in annoyance, demanding to know the purpose of what they were doing. Takeshi responded, "Name the slave trader you sold the dwarves to." Sanae saw no way of escaping. She answered, and here, action was quickly taken once we got information about the slave trader. An orc will accompany them in case they run into difficulties. The team, composed of the relatively healthy dwarves, set out to the slave trader's location. Takeshi was very serious about the matter, thinking about many other things. He hadn't gotten much information about Yasuda, but he discovered that Yasuda had issued an order to submit to him, and they had found out about him. Takeshi then asked his final question. "You guys who had set my house on fire, what was your role in my sister's death?" Sanae was shocked by his question and tried to evade answering, while her friend Sayumi screamed and told him they didn't do anything. Takeshi, angered by her response, demanded she not lie to him and asked if Yasuda had told them anything before the fire, while one of the dwarves was filling the net with stones, causing Sayumi to scream in pain. She eventually gave in and decided to speak, revealing what Yasuda had ordered them to do. They were to follow Mayuko and the others who were in front of Takeshi's house talking to his sister. The two girls reached them, and Sanae called out to Mayuko. One of the girls asked Sanae if her house was over in that direction, to which she replied that she had heard at school that a truck carrying hazardous materials had crashed there. The girls were surprised by this and thought about taking a picture to spread the news quickly. Sanae then told them to head home quickly. Takeshi's sister stood trembling from the news, while the other girls were excited to see it on TV. Mayuko and her friends left, while Sanae and Sayumi stayed outside, laughing about their evil plans and wondering if Takeshi's sister would believe them. Sayumi asked Sanae if it was right to deceive Mayuko and the others. Sanae replied that even if it was wrong, that girl would not leave the house. Sayumi felt guilty and told Sanae that she was just the pig's sister. Sanae agreed, saying Yasuda's orders hurt her heart. Her friend then told her it wasn't good. Sanae heard her and told her they should hurry, telling her to run, but then they both sighed strangely and burst into laughter, revealing that they were just joking. They began guessing what Yasuda was planning, and Sanae said it was test time, explaining what would happen to the So. Sayumi gave random answers until she got it right. The house would be burnt down and turned into roasted pork. They stood there with malicious looks in their eyes, eager to see what would happen. Sayumi told Takeshi they had carried out Yasuda's orders and didn't think there would actually be a fire. Takeshi was deeply upset upon discovering the truth and understanding Yasuda's way of thinking. Yasuda had considered the possibility that Takeshi's sister wouldn't eat the sweets, so he tried to keep her in the house at all costs. He gave everyone a detailed role, while making sure that no one knows the whole picture of the incident. He's making everyone an accomplice. Because no one feels ownership of the crime, everyone thinks in terms that it doesn't matter to them. They didn't care about Fumina's death and didn't consider the situation serious. At this point, Sanae started screaming, reminding him that he had said it would be the last question, while Sayumi was crying, insisting she had told him everything she knew. Sanae then went to ask if he wanted to kill Yasuda. They offered their help in assuring him that they could be useful. Takeshi remained silent for a moment, then suddenly said, "Shut your mouth, you liars." He then told them that if they hadn't lied, Buna would have been fine, and that many people suffered and endured pain and destruction because of their lies. With a serious tone, Takeshi declared, "Receive your reward." All of the dwarves, fueled by their anger and desire for revenge, charged forward, ignoring Sayumi's screams. They grabbed the stones and continued filling the net, while Sayumi's cries echoed around them. After a few moments of silence, Sayumi's laughter suddenly filled the air, who commented that they were no longer heavy at all. Takeshi responded coldly, "I guess not, since your limbs are stretched out." Sayumi started screaming hysterically. One of the dwarves asked her,
Can you see them? The graves. Many died from overworking. A cave-in. An incident due to the reckless mining you imposed.
Sayumi noticed a large rock was nearby. The dwarf continued, telling her they were forced to work even when their friends were crushed. He concluded,
Remember our pain.
Sayumi tried to stop them. She was screaming, though no one listened as the large rock fell on her, crushing her. Her friend, Sanae, eyes bulging in horror, watched helplessly while everyone stared at her. You're next, Takeshi said. Sanae began screaming and thrashing, trying to escape. Blood splattered onto the ground. She suddenly stopped when she realized what was happening. Grabbing the rope and laughing defiantly, she told them they were desperate and fools, leaving Takeshi puzzled by her words. Then she told him that even if he had finished them, it wouldn't change anything. She continued to provoke him, saying that his sister had burned to death and would never come back. She insulted the dwarves too, telling them they had been sold cheaply to a pervert and that they were ultimately just dog food. One of the dwarves, infuriated by her words, quickly approached her, grabbing the net bound to her.
I'll take you down,
he said. Pulling on the ropes, she screamed in pain. He tried with all his might, but she grabbed the rope and gave a devilish smile. A strange light appeared, and her master-slave skill activated. Takeshi and the others were shocked. The jewel is inside her body? Takeshi didn't understand why her skill activated, since she hadn't touched anyone. She smiled wickedly and explained that though the blood had been spilled on the dwarf, it was as if she had touched him directly. She then commanded them not to move, and threatened to finish the dwarf if they did. Takeshi felt helpless as the situation unfolded, while Sanae was extremely angry about what had been done to her, and how she was made to look. She raised her voice, repeatedly saying she would not forgive him and wouldn't let it pass. Fear appeared on Takeshi's face, especially since he didn't know what to do with Sanae, who had transformed and become monstrous. Suddenly, and unexpectedly, the dwarf grabbed her and ran away with her. She was planning to heal her wounds and prepare for the revenge she thirsted for. Takeshi and the others felt a deep sense of disappointment after one of the heroes had escaped from their grasp. After that, the orcs that came back from negotiations followed Yamashita's scent, but lost it. Somewhere, the town was under attack. Yasuda stood there, radiating power as he gazed at that faraway mountain, thinking about Takeshi. He then started calling to his servants. Once upon a time, there was a bug in the villa. Although his servants looked very confused. He kept telling them about this cockroach he saw. It made everything ugly. He continued to look through the window. While everything burned, he admitted, I could not resist, and burned the whole villa. They looked at him afraid. He faced them and whispered, That's how I feel. Then he glanced back at the window while his servant asked with a shaken voice, Someone should go check for the corpse. As bored as he looked, he told them that somebody had been dispatched near a checkpoint near that mountain. On the other side, Takeshi, Lagoda, and that dwarf dude stood looking at the mountain with an explosion nearing it. Yet Lagoda seemed worried if it was Yasuda's ability, which it probably was. After they sat, Takeshi explained the plan he was forming to take down the one who was after him by gathering poisonous plants from the forest to turn into powder, and then they would set traps with them. They both listened intently as he reveals that the affected won't move after questioning. Then he declared, We'll take them down, reducing their strength one by one. With no idea about how much danger awaited Takeshi, the orc sensed something, jumping up and shouting, which made Takeshi ask, worried, What's wrong? They all glanced back. A scream echoed from below. They were all shocked to see dead dwarves lying on the ground. Immediately, Takeshi turned and shouted,
Everyone! Outside now! It's poison gas!
They all looked stunned. Mid-chaos and while they were running for their lives, Takeshi was trying to figure out why the attack happened there while Yasuda had already been tricked. They bolted, running. Yet before he could warn them, his eyes widened. Everything there was dead. Then, the dwarf looked up, worried as he saw someone flying because there was no point in the traps they had set if this guy was in the air. Their enemy landed with his parachute on the ground. Then he bursted out, laughing. Then he landed on top of the tree, mocking Takeshi.
I'm on top, and you're below. That's the way the world is. Isn't that right, pig?
Takeshi was furious as he shouted,
Is this your work, Mitsuya?
Memories flooded back to him of Mitsuya General Hospital, one of Japan's largest, where everyone bowed in respect for their boss, Shigeyuki Mitsuya. He was perceived as arrogant, the heir to the hospital, known for his intelligence, wealth, and promised future. Back then, when Shigeyuki was fuming for losing against Takeshi, he accused him of cheating as he lashed at him. Although the teacher tried to calm him down, Shigeyuki was consumed by jealousy as anger scared Takeshi. During lunch, Ryu Kinzuna spilled food on the ground as he watched in horror. Meanwhile, Shigeyuki grinned sinisterly, contemplating adding something to the already dreadful meal. As he crouched down to put the chemical dose in that dirty food on the ground, he smiled darkly with all his evil classmates and ordered a terrified Takeshi to eat it. As Takeshi's classmates chuckled at his tears after eating the filthy food from the floor, Shigeyuki grinned, relishing the moment. After that, Lagoda was angry. She shot arrows at Shigeyuki, but he dodged them all. Takeshi and Lagoda stood in shock as Shigeyuki skillfully used wind to evade the arrows. Then, to everyone's surprise, he threw fire salamander fluid and red mushroom grenades, leaving them stunned. As the grenades exploded around them, they scrambled to escape. But Shigeyuki's laughter echoed as he taunted.
You're not getting away!
As they fled, Lagoda cried out in fear, shouting that the flames were following her. Takeshi suddenly realized that Shigeyuki's ability was manipulating the wind. The flames ate everything. Shigeyuki from behind him mocked Takeshi as his eyes widened, shocked. As he approached them, he was taunting him about the fire that killed his sister in the house. So they all looked up at that evil, smiling Shigeki, admitting,
Ah, the one who cooked your house? It was me.
This shocked Takeshi. Shigeyuki confessed to Takeshi that he was the one who burned down his house while his sister was inside, igniting a raging fury within Takeshi. Takeshi shouted at him.
Why? Why did you do it?
Shigeyuki was savoring his agony. However, Shigeyuki laughed at him, refusing to answer him and just spat on him. Then he used his wind to ignite the flames at him while shouting,
Burn to death like your sister.
As the flames chased them, they all darted away, while Takeshi was battling and contemplating on how to save the day. Afterward, Takeshi landed on his hands and knees as he watched the forest burn. Sweat and confusion filled his face. However, in that desperate time, he glanced back and shouted,
Lagoda! I have a plan! Get his attention with an arrow!
And with a serious face, she understood his order. Takeshi turned and guided him into the forest, while Shigeyuki thought they were stupid for trying to escape him, unaware of the arrow already coming towards him. He dodged the arrow with the wind, ready to unleash fire, until Takeshi's sudden shout caught him off guard. The orc threw something at Shigeyuki with so much force that it hit him, but Shigeyuki used the Turbulence Dominator technique. Afterward, the object shredded into pieces, and Shigeyuki sneered.
Stupid. There's no way something like this would work.
Then some gas came out of that shredded bag. This shocked him. Shigeyuki was stunned as he began to cough and struggle, his parachute line tangled. So, he started to struggle to pull it back when he was falling down. He used his skills to land with a thud. Upon landing, Shigeyuki found himself immobilized, unable to move. Lifting his head in confusion, he questioned,
What is this?
Takeshi replied calmly, It's poison powder. This shocked Shigeyuki as he proceeded to explain how they managed to bring him down. After that, Shigeyuki was fuming as Takeshi simply stated that he couldn't avoid the powder like he avoided the stones. He barked at him.
But why isn't the poison falling on you?
Takeshi then pointed his finger at something. He pointed at the fire. He said, Your flames created an updraft. So he took a gamble on whether or not the powder would fall on them, which stunned Shigeyuki. The flames started to eat his parachute. His eyes widened in horror when he saw the fire coming at him. He began to beg to put it out to save him. His plea caught Takeshi off guard, though it was expected. He asked him, "You burn my house and kill my sister, and you want me to save you? You insect, Mitsuya!" Then Shikeki shouted,
"It was a lie! I lied. I wasn't the one who burned down your house!"
which consumed Takeshi. While he was sweating and scared to death, he admitted,
"I only brought the fuel, but I got angry and lied."
Yet Takeshi only observed him. He kept swearing that he was telling the truth and offered some information. Takeshi stood silent. Therefore, Takeshi wondered what information, so Shikeki blurted,
There's a princess in the capital of the country. She's special."
Shikeki revealed their hero skills didn't work on her and explained she was under house arrest. Urgently, he asked about their plan as he shouted to put out the fire, so Takeshi ordered the orc to do so. The orc used his leg to put out the fire. As he put off the flames, Shikeki was relieved. However, the orc lifted him up and threw him away. As Shikeki was thrown away inside some pit in the ground, his gas tanks were hit. He landed on his hands, shaking. Takeshi stood over him, watching him. Then he turned around and left as the gas in his backpack started to leak, which scared Shikeki. Quickly, he stopped Takeshi. He pointed out his hand injury. Takeshi could see it, but he didn't look back as Shikeki started to scream. But then, Takeshi glanced back at him and said, "Heal it yourself. Aren't you the son of a doctor?" However, there was no medicine for Shikeki to use. After that, Takeshi asked again, "So why don't you have a treatment ability?" Which Shikeki had no answer for. Then, Shikeki's eyes widened as Takeshi told him that he wasn't talented enough for the goddess to offer it to him. His statement made Shikeki fume in rage as he cursed him. He kept calling him names as he saw himself better than Takeshi. He wanted to cough blood from his mouth. He choked on his blood, dying, while Takeshi walked away from him. 23 people left. In the country, there was a castle, and inside of it sat a princess. Someone was offering her food. Princess Sarah Torva Jarvi looked pissed as she refused those angry girls' alms. Miho Kinoma's jealousy boiled over as she slapped Sarah. Orika Kitagawa scolded her impatience. Yet Sarah was tied up. She calmly pointed out the risk to their heroes if she died, questioning their use of violence. She understood that their survival was crucial for preserving the secret of her abilities. To ensure her safety, she demanded provisions for the people. If they refused, she vowed to starve herself, with Yasuda ready to retaliate. So she simply reminded them of what would happen to them, which pissed Miho. The door opened and Hoshi Hikaru came in. He winked at them as he asked, "What's the matter, beautiful ladies?" After he came, Miho and Orika melted away and they saw him with hearts in their eyes. They went to him to complain about the princess, but he stopped them. He smiled softly and told them he knew Sarah was on a hunger strike again, which pissed her off. He explained that it wouldn't be good for her if he hadn't brought a gift. Then he took out some items while the girls were thrilled, though Sarah was not. It was hideous. But then Hoshi used the belt with the gab on her mouth, shocking her. He poured rice down her mouth with force. He kept pouring the rice. It spilled out from under the container and all over her body, though he was enjoying it without a care. She was shocked as she ate that rice. Etsuo Kamiyama came in, smiling at her. He wanted to sleep with her. However, Miho and Orika shouted at him to get out. But he didn't care as he laughed and wanted to do as he desired. He started to unbuckle his belt. They were shocked, so they both knocked him down with a kick, sending him flying out. Yet Kamiyama smirked as he went out, murmuring that it was his ability. The girls locked the door and asked Hoshi, questioning why he allowed someone like that to stay in the castle. Thus, Hoshi told them that Yasuda knows Kamiyama's ability was useful. He assured them he would protect them from him, which made them content. He then looked back. He gazed at her and he smiled. I'll protect you too. He looked at the gagged princess. He promised that he would never let her die. Several days after the fight with Mitsuya, many dwarves had escaped with Takeshi. On the other side, Takeshi and his group were discussing their plans for gathering friends and equipment to save the princess. So they made their way to the royal castle. Takeshi was determined for this mission. So at night, in the castle, while the princess sat tied on her throne, she was asleep. Though Kamiyama, the creep, barged into her room. He approached, giggling. Sarah opened her eyes with an icy glare. He was eyeing her legs and drooling over her body like a pig. He approached her to take advantage of her, though she stayed there, narrowing her eyes at him. Kamiyama took advantage of the princess being alone and hurried inside.
Hoshi and Yasuda told me not to touch you,
he said, excitedly removing his pants in anticipation of what was to come. The princess looked at him coldly and told him he was pitiful. Kamiyama was taken aback by her words.
What?
He stammered, irritated by the disgust in her eyes. The princess remained calm and explained that his predicament was due to his abilities. That inequality in their performance created disparities. She reminded him again that he was pitiful. Her words struck Katayama deeply. He began to cry, wanting to say something. Suddenly, he sensed someone behind him and turned around to find Hoshi. Approaching him with a calm tone, Hoshi said, "Kamiyama-kun, I told you not to come in here, right?" Kamiyama, unsure of what to say, told him that he had just come to check on the princess. Hoshi kept smiling strangely and repeated, "I told you, right? Not to come in." Kamiyama was frightened by his tone. He grabbed his clothes and ran towards the door. Hoshi stood there, saying, "Good grief." Then he turned to the princess and asked gently if it was scary, reassuring her and telling her to rest a bit for the important parade tomorrow. The princess, unaware of this, asked him about it. He replied, feeling overjoyed. "Yes, a parade. It's finally time." Then he told her that he knew she wanted to meet the people and that he would let her meet them. Then, with a frightening tone and terrifying gaze, he said, "You don't hate them, right?" The princess froze in place, terrified of him. He left her, turned around, and wished her good night, then paused as he remembered something. He asked her to be direct with Etsuo-kun and not to use polite words, because that type of man would misunderstand her. Meanwhile, Etsuo was in the corner of the palace, overwhelmed with joy.
Princess, you care so much about me. I'm always looking at you. I'm so in love with you,
he thought, considering his fellow heroes who stood in his way of his love. Excited, Etsuo let his imagination run wild, thinking,
"Become the king of another world! It's me! It will be done!"
He decided to start training his images. Outside the palace, Takeshi and his group were looking at the closed gate. Lagoda asked Takeshi if he was thinking of breaking it down. He replied that he wasn't because they would be noticed if they made any noise. As they were talking, two dwarves approached. Takeshi stopped them. "Hey, where are you going?" he asked. The dwarves, Doff and Waff, turned to him with confident smiles. They explained,
Dwarven wisdom. When there's royalty and aristocrats, there is an escape route for emergencies.
Most of these routes are underground. He pointed to a specific spot and mentioned that it was the most likely place because it would be easier to dig there. Then he also pointed to a water vein area, saying it would be difficult to create a path there. Waff added that as they narrowed it down, they could find the route quickly. Lagoda was impressed with their idea and praised them, saying it was expected from dwarves. Meanwhile, Takeshi remained silent, lost in thought about something else. Why did my classmates, people who came from another world that is rich with emotions, knowledge, and individuality, call these people a jinn or savages and despise them? The two dwarves succeeded in finding the secret passage. They managed to enter the kingdom. They were surprised to find themselves in an area resembling a city. They wished the path led directly to the castle. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and an orc emerged, being the only path it could take. Lagoda noticed a commotion ahead. Takeshi was puzzled because he didn't hear anything. She explained that it was because she was an elf. Then she heard people chanting the princess's name. Takeshi and the others were astonished. The princess? He wondered why she was outside. Lagoda was also confused, and they quickly moved through the crowd. Amidst the cheers and astonishment of the people, they were shocked by what they saw. The princess was kneeling with a chain held by one of the heroes to prevent her from escaping. Hoshi began calling out to all the citizens.
Burn it into your eyes! This is your former ruler!
These were the things he demanded of them. The citizens couldn't accept it and felt the action was too cruel. Meanwhile, Takeshi and his companions watched from a distance, disbelieving that the princess was being treated in such a terrible manner. Lagoda was greatly upset and strongly desired to intervene and stop it. In contrast, the heroes, Miho and Orika, were delighted by what they were doing to the princess. Then, Miho ordered her to perform the usual trick. The princess was annoyed by his orders and continued to glare at him. Orika spoke up, mocking her, planning to do something else cruel. She targeted one of the citizens and started laughing maliciously. Then, light emerged from her ring and she used an instant construction skill to erect a tower from the ground, lifting one of the people high up. It was extremely high, and her father called out to her.
Milicia!
She was terrified, looking down. Meanwhile, Orika, indifferent and happy with how things were going, suddenly struck the tower with her finger until it began to collapse amidst the screams of the trembling girl. At this point, the princess yelled at her to stop, stating that the people's lives should be guaranteed. Orika told her that she wouldn't die from the fall if she was strong. The princess showed seriousness in her demeanor and asked them if they wanted to continue the performance or not. Although she didn't want to execute it, she felt compelled. This caused the heroines to laugh hysterically and liken her to a dog, calling her derogatory names. None of the people were satisfied with what was happening, and Takeshi, in the background, was losing patience. Lagoda noticed this and asked him not to go. He responded angrily.
I know.
He was gritting his teeth in frustration, wanting to change the situation, but knowing if he jumped in, he wouldn't be able to save the princess. At this point, the heroines began telling him bad things about the princess and asking the others to join her by calling her those names. No one wanted to accept that, which greatly annoyed Orika. She went to the father, hitting him and demanding that he call her the word. Otherwise, she threatened to destroy the pillar. She screamed at him, demanding viciously that he comply. But he stuck to his beliefs and refused to insult the princess. However, she intervened and asked him to insult her, to protect his daughter, leaving the father feel lost and unsure of what to do. The father hesitantly encouraged her in a soft voice. But Orika became even more upset and started hitting him, demanding that he say it louder. He began shouting loudly, cursing the princess. Meanwhile, Miho turned to the crowd and asked them to also insult the princess. Everyone began calling her those names reluctantly, and their voices filled the place, unfortunately, unified. The princess was forced to accept it for the safety of her people. Wait a moment, Hoshi intervened. Miho stopped the people to hear what he had to say. He then lowered his gaze to the princess and apologized to her, explaining that he had to make her look foolish so she could understand her position, and that was necessary. Then he said, "Do you understand your situation? As long as you're alive, you'll face disgrace." Then he smiled strangely and innocently. He told her not to worry because he still found her beautiful in every way. The princess didn't respond to his taunts and remained silent. He then turned towards the tower, drew his sword, and quickly dashed over towards it, demolishing it amidst the shock. The girl who was on top, the building collapsed. The father screamed. The girl fell to the ground with stones on top of her. She was bleeding out. The father rushed towards her to check on her, while Hoshi admired his skills. He then told them that the purpose of this day was to showcase the princess, and it wasn't good to have anything obscuring the view. The heroines were enamored by everything he said. On the other hand, the father tried to help his daughter out from under the rubble. The princess felt hopeless and began biting her lips until they bled, crying and apologizing to everyone. Hoshi noticed her and told her that blood suited her, which disturbed her even more. while he remained indifferent, continuing his path on his horse with the rest of the procession. Takeshi was on the verge of exploding with anger. Why were they treating her like this? After being treated like a pig, and now seeing the princess now being treated like a dog. Hoshi and the rest continued the procession, while Takeshi and his companions decided to head them off at the palace. They were able to gather from what they had heard from the people outside that there were 4 of their classmates in the palace, meaning the 3 outside, the castle would be short-staffed. Takeshi thought of exploiting the situation to take out the hero alone and deal with the rest later upon their return. He enlisted the help of Orca and Lagoda to locate their adversary. Quietly, they entered the palace, facing no trouble in infiltrating it and finding no signs of alertness. Lagoda then suspected that it could be a trap, and suddenly, they heard something. A strange noise coming from above behind the door. Everyone approached cautiously towards the door and found a projector shaped like a dog. Takeshi and the others intervened and stopped Kamiyama after knocking him down. Takeshi quickly wanted to ask him some questions. Kamiyama shouted as he knelt down.
Wait! Did you come to kill us? I'm asking to kill Hoshi!
Takeshi was puzzled by his request. Kamiyama continued, asking him to save the princess and that he would help with his strength. Takeshi looked down at Lagoda in disbelief and made sure it was a trap. They prepared to knock him down, but he suddenly got agitated and told them they were mistaken.
Look over there!
He pointed with his eyes, informing him that they had taken his gem, and his power lay in taking a quick glance from afar. He explained that his eyes were like cameras. He could display images from a distance. He then told them that there were 10 of them to monitor everywhere. Excitedly, he told them that his help would be useful. But Takeshi understood something else from his words. So Lagoda asked him to take care of him. And when he approached, Kamiyama asked him to wait because he knew he harbored resentment against the class and told him, laughing sinisterly, that he had indeed planned to kill Hoshi and would allow him to participate in it. After Takeshi and his group snuck into the palace, they captured Kamiyama and interrogated him. He said he wanted to take down Hoshi, though Takeshi didn't trust him. However, Kamiyama was nervous as he told him that he had a grudge against Hoshi. He wanted him dead too. But then Takeshi was too stunned as Kamiyama said,
You understand what it's like, right?
In an instant, Takeshi pulled his hair, roaring. What do you mean I understand? Even my sister was murdered. Kamiyama groaned in pain as Takeshi yanked his hair, snarling. All of you people are involved. Kamiyama acted innocently, but hinted he knew the culprit, making Takeshi angry and demanding answers, yet Lagoda intervened, insisting that they needed Kamiyama's info, even though Takeshi was still mad. After a moment of thinking, Takeshi calmed down, making Kamiyama relieved. But Takeshi was deep in thoughts. Takeshi warned him that even if he flinched, he would lose his jewel. Yet before he could finish, Kamiyama chirped in, saying,
I know. My ability has no offensive power. Don't worry.
Following, Takeshi pulled something near Kamiyama's face, shocking him. He then whispered, I'm keeping an eye on you. With a shaken smile, Kamiyama smiled, sweating nervously. Next, Takeshi glanced back and ordered Waf and Doff to set a trap. They were thrilled to show real dwarven skills. It was almost evening. Miho mocked the princess after they humiliated her, while Orika teased about who was in charge. They were unaware, however, of someone sneaking up behind Miho, ready to strike. As the stranger moved in to attack with his knife, he caught her off guard. Miho suddenly vanished after a quick jab from his blade. As the stranger stumbled, Miho's egoistic ghost scale kicked in, leaving her baffled by the attack. Despite her confusion, the man accused her of mocking the princess and taking his daughter, waving his knife furiously. And suddenly, Hoshi burst in, cursing at him. Hoshi looked pissed as he eyed the man who entered the castle with his ugly looks. He looked up, cursing Kamiyama for his slacking. He was fuming. He turned on his horse to find the princess, and he ordered to kill the man without care, making the 2 evil women happy. At that moment, the princess shouted at him to run away, as the man went after Hoshi. However, Orika used her skill to create a building in front of him. The stunned man was scared as they smiled at him, enjoying their hunt. Miho started to sing as she brought up some screw. Suddenly, she disappeared, spooking the man, his fear of not knowing where she was. Out of nowhere, he looked to his side. Miho used a screw to puncture the man's eye while singing. Then she used more screws on him. Immediately, the man fell back, crying, covering his injured eye while the girls smiled maliciously. They sang as his face was covered in nails. He was bleeding, screaming in agony as Orika used her jewel. The ground shook, creating a hole where the man fell inside, screaming as the hole started to close around him. Though Orika found it amusing, she used her gem to collapse the floor on him for good. All the while, he was screaming for his life. The ground closed on him for good, killing him. They burst out laughing at him, while Takeshi and his group saw them as Kamiyama used his skill. He clenched his teeth, fuming at their doings. However, Miho and Orika smiled as they mocked the dead man for trying to save the princess. Orika wondered about what Hoshi's plans were for the princess. Then, Miho winked at her, hinting that Hoshi was an idea man. They burst out laughing, remembering Takeshi's house fire. His eyes widened up, full of rage. He clenched his teeth angrily. He wanted to know what Hoshi's role was in all of this. Later on, Miho and Orika entered the palace, calling after Kamiyama. He suddenly showed up, shouting,
"The pig has entered the castle!"
This news shocked them. They snapped at him for not doing anything earlier, though he told them that Hoshi and he were fighting. They all bolted towards the exit, running to the fight as fast as they could, though Kamiyama's skill, sneak peek, spilled some liquid all over them. When they stopped, they were fuming as they realized Kamiyama's skill peeked from afar. The floor below them suddenly started to shake. They used their abilities to escape the trap. Miho used her ghost skill, and Orika created a hole in the ceiling to run through it. After Orika escaped from the trap and looked down, she was unaware of Doff behind her. Then, Miho looked at the hole in the ceiling and wanted to ask her friend, though two figures behind her whispered, "You should worry about yourself more." Takeshi and the orc faced Miho as she sighed, puzzled by his presence instead of fighting Hoshi. Then she froze. She hinted that he beat Hoshi, which made her snap, drawing her weapon. She revealed more screws as she used her skill and vanished in front of them. Unaware of her attack, Miho caught him off guard as she was about to attack him. As she jammed her nail towards Takeshi's head, the orc used his axe and split her arm open. She was in agony as she lost her hand. Miho shouted in shock after losing it. She asked him why her arm was off as she held her arm shaking. He said he figured she couldn't touch him while she was an apparition, because she needed to be materialized, which made her sweat. As Kamiyama giggled from afar. With the missing hand, Miho was fuming, disbelieving this whole thing. Then Takeshi looked at her and explained, "The moment you materialized, so did this liquid." The orc used his sense of smell to be the indicator of when she would appear. She cursed at her situation. Miho gazed at them with a hateful look. After that, they took Orika and Miho. As they walked, Kamiyama pushed them to walk faster. He was threatening them. However, Takeshi looked at him and warned, "Don't end them yet. I still have something to ask them later." Takeshi asked him about Hoshi's location. He told him that he had entered his bedroom. Afterward, Takeshi rushed to rescue the princess and found her tied up. Lagoda shook her awake, though when the princess looked at them, they realized it wasn't her. Suddenly, Hoshi barged in with his ability, killing the mock princess in the process. After that, Takeshi and Lagoda fell back from the attack as Hoshi smiled at them. Takeshi was confused about what was going on here. Takeshi stared at Kamiyama in disbelief. Kamiyama erupted into laughter. He confessed to his alliance with Hoshi. The dwarves warned him about the hostage situation, and Miho and Oriko smiled, urging Hoshi to stop them. In a swift, powerful stride, Hoshi rode his horse and attacked the dwarves, killing them on the spot. Everyone froze in shock. Doff and Waf were brutally killed, and Miho and Orika, they were injured too from the attack, making Kamiyama confused, asking why he did that. Everyone looked stunned. Takeshi asked,
Weren't you friends?"
However, Hoshi smiled at the bleeding Miho and Orika, saying that he couldn't afford to be a hostage too. Next, Kamiyama agreed with Hoshi as he giggled from afar. He bragged about teaming up with Hoshi to end Takeshi and his gang, while Miho and Orika were crying and shaking. Kamiyama mocked them. Following that, Hoshi smirked, outlining his scheme to tell Yasuda that they were slain by Takeshi. Meanwhile, Kamiyama warned him to show gratitude. In an instant, Kamiyama's smile faded. Hoshi's attack severed his arm. He was infuriated by his attitude. After that, Kamiyama cursed and yelled in pain, though Hoshi admitted that he wanted to kill everyone to keep the truth from Yasuda. Then he pledged to protect the princess, claiming to be a noble knight. With a dark look, Hoshi challenged Takeshi to a showdown, matching his fury. After Hoshi declared the fight with Takeshi, even back then, when Hoshi was on each cover of magazines, all women would fall for him. Hoshi had his way, both with money and with women. He knew that in this world, beauty was everything. He thought TV nights were cool, all about justice and beauty. He saw himself as one of them, and anything ugly, totally evil. Remembering Takeshi getting beat up just made him even more convinced. After he made those statements, Takeshi moved towards him angrily. Then, Takeshi snapped in his face.
Beauty is justice? Ugly people are evil? Are you kidding me?
Though Hoshi didn't care. He continued, ugly people are evil. It's justice to eliminate them. He learned this from the previous world. He remembered from back then. He stumbled onto the ground, cursing the person who dirtied his expensive clothes. Though that person offered his hand, asking if he was okay. It was a homeless man. He had stumbled into him, causing Hoshi to fall to the ground. He politely asked if he was okay, then apologized and left Hoshi stunned. However, Hoshi didn't like this at all. He viewed that man as an ugly person who touched his pretty expensive clothes. So after that, the homeless man went on his way, though he looked back as he heard some noises. He went after him and struck him with a bat, knocking him down while the man begged him to stop, though Hoshi was beating him nonstop. Then he glanced at a frame of the man's family. He deemed them as ugly. He broke this frame too, and kept beating the man while enjoying his deeds. He was proud of his work after he beat the man. He continued telling Takeshi that after that, he continued his mission to beat all homeless people. He believed this as the beauty mission. It was his privilege, so Takeshi was shocked. Homeless hunting? Though Hoshi preferred it as beautiful action activities. Takeshi and Lagoda looked at him, fuming. Hoshi kept blabbering about how Takeshi had killed the hero classmates and he was here to kidnap the princess. Hoshi was smiling, thrilled to defeat him and saw him as the ugly villain. He then said, I am the authentic beauty in this world, a true knight of justice. Following, Takeshi was fuming. He realized how conceited he was. Yet Hoshi expressed that he did not expect Takeshi to get in his way of this role too. Takeshi was confused and he asked, the previous world? So he looked up at them and asked, don't you remember? You and your sister stumbled upon the scene right after the vagrants were cleaned up. Takeshi froze, disbelieving as he recalled the time when he and his sister walked and found dead men. As he hurried towards them, he told his sister to call the ambulance, though she looked back, noticing someone, as Hoshi hid himself behind a wall. And Hoshi was more concerned about getting caught, although no one did. Realization hit Takeshi as he roared. At that time, it was you? However, Hoshi sighed, worried more about losing his money for worrying. Then he sighed, relieved. When he smiled, he was happy that Fumina died after she witnessed him. Takeshi froze, eyes bulging. Vibrating with rage, he choked out.
You. What did you say?
Hoshi told him that he was sure that his sister was happy for her end. He kept dissing their looks. Takeshi shook with rage, head lowered in fury. Making matters worse, Hoshi declared, That's why you pigs should be grateful to us. We freed her from being ugly in this cycle. Takeshi's teeth nearly shattered as he clenched them in fury. He roared, Shut the hell up! Though Hoshi told him he should be grateful. However, Takeshi was seeing red as he snarled.
Fumina's value is decided by her! A bastard like you does not get to decide!
This silenced him. Boiling over with rage, he barked,
Hoshi!
I'll never forgive you.
With a sigh, Hoshi directed his weapon towards Takeshi as he declared,
Let me get rid of you!
He sprang into action, Hoshi, his weapon moving at the speed of light. But Lagoda intervened just in time, saving Takeshi. After Lagoda saved Takeshi, Hoshi praised Lagoda and mocked him, though Takeshi was laughing. This was bothering him. Takeshi was giggling as he confessed that he was an ugly murderer just like Hoshi was, and that started to bother him. After that sneering comment, Hoshi attacked them. Lagoda and Takeshi ran towards the gate, escaping. As they ran, Takeshi felt a thrill, knowing that he could bait Hoshi into predicting his moves. Then, bricks started to rain down upon them. The whole room started to crumble as the rocks fell. Takeshi, in the midst of Hoshi's onslaught, stumbled upon a mirror, where he stood, fixated on his own reflection. As he saw his reflection, an idea sprang to his mind. They dodged the falling bricks. Takeshi came up with a dangerous gambling idea to save the day. After Hoshi followed them, he couldn't find them. He sighed in frustration as he vowed to finish him off with one final blow. Suddenly, a figure from afar called out to him. He started a bolt to take him down as he saw Takeshi standing there. He used his skills to fire at him. However, as he rode up on his horse, he crashed through the wall and froze midair, realizing that there was no floor beneath him. Takeshi used the mirror to trick Hoshi, who fell for it and stumbled into the pool from above. After the fall, Hoshi plunged into the pool, forcefully, causing him to groan and scream. His armor was too heavy. It was pulling him down as he struggled to get up. He finally freed himself from his armor and surfaced. He gasped for air as he pulled himself up. But when he glanced up, the orc sucker punched him in the face, knocking him back into the pool. After that, Takeshi explained to him that if he had dived deep, kicked off the floor, and rushed out, he wouldn't have made the wrong call. Later on in the castle, Takeshi did not come back inside the castle. His classmates were rendered powerless, yet the princess still needed to be rescued. He ascended the stairs. He knew Hoshi was reckless, so he might put her in a different room. As he opened the door to her room, he couldn't believe, after being called so many names, that this was his destiny to save the princess. He approached her, saying that he had come to help, yet she glanced out and murmured that she was watching out the window as the fight went on. That surprised him. As he stood there, she turned back and whispered that with the coming dawn, a savior appeared. She smiled at him softly, praising him, hoping for a new era, of which had just begun. He blushed from her kind words. Later on, the people roared in anger as the evil heroes were thrown on the floor. Hoshi, shirtless and kneeling, stared at himself in the mirror, while Takeshi urged him to examine his face closely. As Hoshi examined himself, Takeshi stood behind the mirror. He frightened him, as he said that things were going to get ugly.